शिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिणि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिणि दितिश्रुतरोषिणि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुषुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते.
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Good evening everyone. I hope the audio is coming fine. Let me know if it isn't. So first of all, I saw some good comments. I'll go through them as well. And firstly, I apologize for not coming live for so many days. Wait, I'll change the background, right? It takes too much attention away and makes your brain work pointlessly harder. So I have not come online because Durga Puja season is coming up, right? So all the Durga Puja music stuff, music production stuff has also come about. Last year, I was lucky enough to be the arranger to the biggest Durga Puja Bengali hit song of the year, which has gathered 11 million views so far in 1 year. It's not even 1 year of last year's Durga Puja. And this time, I hope so that it will do as well. This time the song is being sung by, and she will be the one in the video as well. Last time we did it with Monami Ghosh. She was in the video and it was sung by Antara or Ankita Nandi. I can't exactly remember myself. Lol. This time we are doing it with Ankita Bhattacharya, a famous singer, has won the Bengali Saregamapa and stuff. So let's see how that goes. But it will probably be the most epic Durga Puja theme anthem you've ever heard in your life. And secondly, I'm noticing some misconception and misunderstanding about my posts on Bangladesh student movement in the community tab. See, guys, first of all, there are misconceptions on many sides. I think on all sides. It was initially started by what they call their atheist bloggers, Muktamona and stuff. It was started by them against the reservations. Okay. It has now absolutely been hijacked by the Jamaat and stuff. I know that. And without the Jamaat and all, without Khaleda Zia's party, they would not be able to sustain such a gigantic protest. Okay. Such a gigantic mass movement without them. Because Bangladesh is, in general, among the populace, generally pretty much an Islamofascist country. The only liberals are in some cities and in some university campuses. So now the movement is something else altogether. But the people who are dying, among them are the atheist blogger types also, who are, by the way, the main sane voices in favor of their Hindu minorities, okay? Because commies are always in favor of the minorities, right? So these guys are the ones who usually stand up to the Islamofascists in favor of Hindus. And plus, they are 18, 19-year-old kids as well. And this is the same misconception that people who have forever been in the Indian right-wing movement, they don't, I guess, know too many commies. So, like people say that the Hok Colorado movement was funded by China, etc. So I went to the Hok Colorado movement. I did not get funded by China. I paid my own, I paid the metro tickets for myself, went there, then walked in the protest and went back home with my own fucking money. Similarly, there are actually atheist blogger types, young kids who think if at all there must be Islam, it must be, I mean, everyone live and let live, etc. They have their own interpretation of Islam. Or some of them are atheists who probably think Hindu fascism is going on in India as well. But they are the ones who also want to protect Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. They are also the ones who are getting killed alongside the Jamatis. Okay, let make no mistake about that. And secondly, my entire point of posting those things is not to take a side. You all have to come out of this idea that every time someone posts something or points out something, they are taking a side. I am not even taking a side there. I'm trying to jump into that conversation because it's going to become, if it hasn't already, it's going to become a global solidarity, commie solidarity student movement, right? And Indian right wingers, Hindutwadis, also have to have a stance on it. If you are in the political game, you'll have to have a stance on every fucking thing. And for every fucking thing, someone or the other goes on saying, why do we care about this? Why do we care about USA? Why do we care about UAE? Why do we care about Saudi Arabia? Why do we care about Bangladesh? Why do we care about Indian commies? Who cares what they say? And उसके बाद इसमें इसका क्यों नैरेटिव है, उसमें उसका क्यों नैरेटिव है, इसमें इसने क्यों नैरेटिव बना लिया? सब कुछ में कमेंट नहीं करेगा, कुछ में एनालिसिस नहीं करेगा, कुछ में रिसर्च नहीं करेगा, उसके बाद बोलेगा कि अरे इसमें कॉमी ने बोसरी वाले ने कैसे नैरेटिव बना लिया. तुमको हर चीज में घुस घुस के एनालाइज करके या तो साइड लेना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो कुछ ना कुछ ओपिनियन रखना पड़ेगा, अपने आप के लिए भी हो. Even then, you have to have a stance on things. So I was merely pointing out that, interesting. Look at how the non-Hindu fascist government treats its students, and see how the so-called Hindu fascist government treats its student protesters. That is the entire point of my post. Intellectual isolationism won't work now. Yes, I disagree a tiny bit. We need to assess and choose if our stance is warranted. No. Stance, they may not want it. We may not really need it. But when they comes, there needs to be a huge mass of opinions on every issue from Hindutwadi debater side as well. Okay, now let me check some comments from the beginning. Okay, Namaskar Nandish, feels after a long time. Yeah, at one point in a live on Timcast IRL, Tim asks Carl, so it was your whole point? Hey, yes, spoiler there, Parthopi. But I'm glad you watched this podcast already. I haven't watched it fully. I've watched up until half, I think, or a little less than half. By the way, guys, Timcast IRL is officially my favorite political podcast in the whole world. Second favorite is these days Ajit Bharti's Farsacast podcast. The phenomenal job that Ajit Bharti is doing with the Hindu Cafe guy. Oh my God. The Hindu Cafe guy goes on making bangers after bangers in every episode. And then with Ajit Bharti, they discuss almost the exact same things that we discuss here in English and Bengali. It's uncanny. And of course, they have way better research and balls to say stuff which I can't say. Bhupendro, hi, namaskaram. Jai Shri Ram Ninar, Jai Shri Ram Bhaskar Chandra Bose. Let's talk about initial days of liberalism. Yeah, they will. Nandish is saying Hobbes introduced the idea that people gave up natural rights to freedom in exchange for security and protection. Yeah. According to Locke, this social contract was rooted in the duty of all individuals to respect the rights of others. Yeah. And ये जो नेचुरलिस्टिक फैलेसी में ये लिबरल्स भी घुसते हैं, लिबर्टेरियन भी घुसते हैं. कुछ दिन पहले एक ट्विटर में एक लिबर्टेरियन के साथ बवाल हो गया मेरा. तो वो बोल रहा है कि अच्छा, he was trying to challenge me that, oh, you are a libertarian and so why do you have a problem with open borders? Wow. तो उनका मानना है कि फ्रीडम इज नेचुरल, बाकी सब तो ऊपर से हम पर थोपा जा रहा है. तो और कल्चर नाम का कोई चीज ही नहीं है. सबके साथ हमेशा सिर्फ ट्रेड ही करते फिरे. सब कोई ट्रेडर, सब कोई वैश्य है. मतलब पूरे वर्ल्ड में बिजनेस के अलावा कुछ है ही नहीं जिंदगी भाई. तो ऐसे okay, I need to decrease my galis, but anyway, so that kind of view is also based on this kind of stupidity, and which people think I also believe in when they criticize me for being in favor of libertarianism, but I am more in the sense in the let's say the term national libertarianism. Okay, like Vivek's. That's the view I'm with. Some people recently criticized me in my community tab section in my YouTube channel that libertarianism has destroyed USA. They mean neoliberalism. They don't mean libertarianism. Libertarianism कहाँ हो रहा है यूएसए में आज के दिन में? गवर्नमेंट का पावर्स, स्टेट फंडिंग, स्टेट का साइज बढ़ते जा रहा है. लिबर्टेरियनिज्म जो बोल रहा है उसका एग्जैक्ट उल्टा कर रहे हो, और उल्टा करते जा रहे हो 30-40 साल से. फिर देश गया गड्ढे में, उसका ब्लेम लिबर्टेरियनिज्म को दिया जा रहा है. ये क्या अजीब बात है. तो रिमेंबर, फ्रीडम इज नॉट नेचुरल, नाइदर इज प्रॉस्पेरिटी. ये एक बार थॉमस सोएल जब कॉमी थे, उनको एक प्रोफेसर एक प्रोफेसर को थॉमस सोइल ने पूछा था कि सर हमने ये जो स्लेवरी जैसा एक खराब आइडिया है, ये आइडिया हमारे दिमाग में आया कैसे? कोई इंसान के दिमाग में ऐसा आइडिया, खराब आइडिया कैसे आ सकता है? तो उसके प्रोफेसर ने थॉमस सोइल को बोला कि देखो भाई, फ्रीडम तो नेचुरल कभी था नहीं। तुम सोचो कि ये फ्रीडम जैसा बढ़िया आइडिया कैसे आया दिमाग में? उसके लिए क्या सर्कमस्टांसेस थे? उसमें घुसो। एंड इन द सेम वे, poverty is natural. Poverty is a natural state of affairs. Okay. Prosperity, wealth, personal property, ये सब है बनाया हुआ fruits of a good civilization. According to Locke, this social contract was rooted in the duty of all individuals to respect the rights of owners. But right now they would be rolling in their graves. उसका भी बढ़िया क्रिटिक दिया है वैसे नंदिश. नमस्कार अभय. भूपेंद्रो अभय. दोस्तों is Farsi be decolonial. Yeah, I was trying to make fun of वो हमारे, अरे वो कौन है जिसके YouTube चैनल से, अरे दुग्गल साहब, उसका मैं नाम भूल जाता हूँ. The culture war is going to come to India soon. Yeah, if it hasn't already. We need meta-modernism. What is the song? What song? Last year's song. Last year's song was Ailo Uma Barite. This year I don't know what it will be called. Probably Notun Shajeuma. Dostoevsky. Mitra, you could have joined the Matador, Buddhadev, Social Justice. Yeah, I did not join the Matador because I was late. I disagree a tiny bit. ये तो हो गया. Dada, I think the tender system is the government way of doing corruption by intervention in private and to take care of that private to corruption from public, if not. थोड़ा elaborate करो Ritesh. I could not exactly understand. I think the tender system is the tender system is the government. Absolutely. And to take care of that private do corruption. Absolutely, exactly. I agree. What is your stance exactly, if you can summarize in 3 or 4 lines? That good question, Buddhadev. Thank you for asking this. He's asking about the Bangladesh context, okay? My stance is, see what happens when you try to create a nation out of nothing. This is what happens when you try to create a nation by just your tantrum. Bangladesh and Pakistan were created out of a baby-like tantrum. कोई कारण नहीं है, मुझे चाहिए, मुझे एक ना अपना देश चाहिए, मुझे देश चाहिए. So now see, what is the situation Bangladeshis are in? Let's think of the 1-2% sane, non-Islamofascist Bangladeshis. Okay, they are in a situation where they have to agree and go along with this basically dictatorial government who kills 100 students because they are protesting. Why? Because, and what they don't get is that the other option is actual Islamofascism. And since they are stupid as any other atheist commie liberal in our country as well, stupid or maybe evil even, they are teaming up with the Islamofascists, which has always happened in history. This is USSR, Afghanistan, not Afghanistan, Iran, all over again, India even. तो उनका कोई ऑप्शन ही नहीं है. एक तरफ शेर है, एक तरफ भालू है. यही होता है. यही वेस्ट बंगाल का भी हाल होता था. Remember when in one of our earlier podcasts with Mysterious Sociologist, when I asked him that, I think based on some audience question, that how do you see Bengali pride? Okay, he said that being Bengali or living in West Bengal did not save me. Being a part of India saved me. Being a part of India is saving West Bengal even today. तो see बांग्लादेश का क्या हाल है. तो इससे हमको सीखना चाहिए. हमको मतलब बंगालियों को, कौमियों को, जो कोई भी देख रहा है. और देखो, our viewers, you and I to know that this should not be done, but this Bangladesh situation gives us an opportunity to explain the fuckers in our country that see, this is what happens when you ask for stupid things, like play stupid games, win stupid prizes. तो आज बांग्लादेश का कोई ऑप्शन ही नहीं है. वहां पे इलेक्शन होगा भी नहीं. या तो इंडिया करवाएगा, चाइना करवाएगा, नहीं तो यूएसए करवाएगा. ये प्रधानमंत्री जाएंगी तो इस्लामोफैशिस्ट आएंगी. तो बैठे रहो ऐसा देश लेके. बढ़िया काम किया है अलग देश बना के. That is my stance. And therefore, keep watching it and observe it very closely. Brother, context of this stream, please. The context है कि Tim Pool, who is my favorite political podcast host in the world, he was hosting this conversation with 2 people. Carl Benjamin, who used to run that famous YouTube channel, who got banned from YouTube multiple times, called Sargon of Akkad. Okay, he got banned for criticizing commies. and someone called Comrade Tomlinson. They discuss how liberalism itself as an ideology might be a problem. And along with Timpul, the co-host is the vocalist of the band All That Remains, and anyone who started listening to metal in 2006 2007 has been a fan of that band. Everyone in Kolkata used to love that band, but today Phil Levante, the vocalist of that band, is a co-host with Timpul. I mean, in all his podcasts, he is a staunch anti-communist and counter-revolutionary, as he is as he describes himself, and he is a very politically aware right-wing person himself, more so classical liberal. So Nandish is saying the liberals that come after Hobbes and Locke believed in equal opportunity for all. Well, all white men, true. There are some issues where our stance is unwelcomed or not indeed. For example, US domestic politics. M Shastri, see, वो अनवेलकम है कि नहीं, उसमें उनका जो अनवेलकमनेस है वो हमारे तरफ से अनसॉलिसिटेड है, क्योंकि यूएस व्यूज ऑन अस इज आल्सो अनसॉलिसिटेड, राइट? कॉमी व्यू ऑन वेदर everyone can enter Sabrimala is unsolicited, right? तो क्या अनसॉलिसिटेड ओपिनियन है कि नहीं, उसके बेसिस पे तो कुछ हो नहीं रहा है. तो therefore just ignore what people think, which part of your views are solicited or unsolicited. हमको व्यू रखना ही है, क्योंकि किसी ना किसी के लिए ये solicited है ही. Ajit does it in Hindi, just imagine the reach. Yes, the contribution Ajit Bharti is doing, इसका रिपरकशन तो गवर्नमेंट में किसी को पता भी नहीं है. गवर्नमेंट में तो शायद आधे लोग इनसे अग्री भी नहीं करते होंगे, बट यू एंड आई who agree with those kinds of views, we know, and probably we even can't fathom the amount of minds he's changing, the amount of positive contribution to society Ajit fucking Bharti is making. It has far reaching, recurring, infinite consequences for the betterment of India, because this is what needs to happen. A Hindu libertarian wing needs to come up. What we have at the moment is somewhat of a Hindu protectionist view. वो भी गवर्नमेंट तो एग्जीक्यूट भी नहीं कर रहा है. डिमांड है हिंदू प्रोटेक्शनिज्म का इन द मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द हिंदुत्व साइड. द गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट इवन ऑन बोर्ड विद दैट, बट इवन हिंदू प्रोटेक्शनिज्म इज गोइंग टू स्क्रू आवर कंट्री एंड सोसाइटी एंड आवर इकोनॉमी. तो द बेटर पाथवे इज हिंदू लिबर्टेरियनिज्म, जो कि अजित भारती और ये हिंदू कैफे वाला लड़का कर रहा है. Charvik Sahai, what do you think we reduce government size by deleting Women Rights Commission? Absolutely. Hindu Jan Jagruti Samiti has been conducting several summits. I think there's a non-sung ground as well. I agree. This is a very important point, M. Shastri, that I think one of the better things that has happened after this sort of political debacle that this dispensation faced is that now what has been normalized is a Hindutva normal and a baseline Hindutva minded under 40 support base who does not have that fanatical love and affection for just one political party. यही तो नॉर्मलाइज होना था. यही बहुत बढ़िया काम है, क्योंकि उस तरफ तो यही है ना कि तुम अगर रास्ते में कोई भी लिबरल या कॉमी को उठा के 5 प्रश्न पूछो, इकोनॉमिक्स पे, कल्चर पे, धर्म पे, जियोपॉलिटिक्स में, हर चीज में देखोगे उसका जो स्टांस है वो आइदर सीपीआईएम या कांग्रेस से मिलता है, वर्ड फॉर वर्ड. मगर तुम पूछो कि किसको वोट देता है, वो बोलेगा मैं वोट नहीं देता हूं, सारे पॉलिटिकल पार्टी खराब है, कौन सीपीआईएम इसने क्या किया है, कांग्रेस ने ये क्या किया है. तो उनका क्या एडवांटेज है कि देयर इज दिस नॉन पॉलिटिक्स फॉलोइंग मास who does not even probably vote, who does not care for any particular political party, but has those views imbibed in their veins. वो अब हमारा हो रहा है, and that is brilliant. That is absolutely fascinating. का हाल बा? Yeah, ठीक है. National Libertarian, interesting term, yes. And there's interesting thing happening in Maharashtra BJP. अच्छा. So there is discussion on Hinduism then in this podcast. I don't think so. I haven't watched it fully. BJP may be decentralizing. Okay, Dada, okay. Now I'll get to the stream. Okay, let's see if there's any more comment I need to reply. I would argue that today's liberal elites are just as powerful and aloof as the old aristocracy. They absolutely. What is this about? Dada, your stance will make us reactionaries rather than tactical or strategic. Having a stance on everything has diminishing returns. It makes the larger movement. No, it won't, because everyone can't physically and logistically have a stance on each and everything, but in general the movement must have a stance on everything. I can't have a stance on each and everything. I don't even follow each and everything, right? So it won't be a diminishing return for me. As for diminishing return for the general movement itself, it won't be a diminishing return, because uh, let's say when the commies discuss what was the Hindutva stance on this evil thing that happened in Bangladesh, we have something. If it instead it turns out that we did not have a stance, it seems like we don't care about the students, or we don't care about the country, or it's not that even we care, but it's great that not only we care or not care, we have moved beyond the caring part. We are taking lessons from Bangladesh's screw up. That's an even better stance to have. Can we define what we are calling liberalism? Yeah, we will get to that in the live stream. Our proud Kongi Karnataka. Yes, M Shastri, when you have a political friend, junior engineer under you, get to know will the work. These videos are long. Who is going to listen to such long videos? भाई, ये कमेंट को हम थोड़ा एड्रेस करते हैं. दुनिया में एक पॉपुलर पॉडकास्ट बताओ जिसका कोई भी वीडियो 1.5 घंटे या 2 घंटे से कम है, एक्सेप्ट इंडिया. इंडिया में जो रील देखने वाले हैं, जो फूड ब्लॉगिंग देखने वाले हैं, उनको 15 मिनट में सब कुछ जानना है. उनको उनको हम एड्रेस नहीं कर रहे हैं. उनको टिम्पुल नहीं एड्रेस करता है, उनको जो रोगन नहीं एड्रेस करता है, उनको मैं भी एड्रेस नहीं करता हूं. अगर तुम्हारा अटेंशन स्पैन है फूड ब्लॉगिंग देखने का, देन यू आर नॉट माई ऑडियंस. Go learn things on topsoil level, no problem. You will be a good cadre. You'll be a good let's say fodder, okay, for the opposite side. You'll have opinions. It won't be based on any solid grounding. You will lose debates, or be swayed by other things. I don't care about you. But long form content is where the real knowledge production is happening. तो अजीत भारती के जो लॉन्ग वीडियोस है, अजीत भारती का भाई पेट कैसे चलता है? डोनेशन से, या बीजेपी उसको फंड करता है? लोगों के व्यूज से ही पेट चलता है. तो लोग देख रहे हैं लंबे वीडियोस. और ये बियर बाइसेप्स तो 1 घंटे में रखता है, 1.5 घंटे में रखता है. तो और फिर उसका क्वेश्चन है इतना घटिया क्वेश्चन ज्यादातर टाइम, या फिर उसका क्वेश्चन ही होता है इतना लंबा, तो उसमें कंटेंट बहुत छोटा हो जाता है. उसमें ज्यादा नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन नहीं पॉसिबल है. मगर उसके अलावा जो कोई भी बड़ा पॉडकास्ट है दुनिया में, स्पेशली यूएसए में, जो जहां पे लोग 2-3 जॉब्स कर रहे हैं, वहां पे बैठ के लोग 2.5 घंटे, 3 घंटे, 4 घंटे, 5 घंटे का पॉडकास्ट देख रहे हैं भाई. लेक्स फ्रीडमैन, टिम पूल, जो रोगन, हमेशा के लिए. ठीक है, ये सब कैसे हो रहा है? ऐसा तो नहीं है कि अकेला अकेला सिर्फ भारतीय आदमी ही इतना इतना व्यस्त है कि उसको 2 घंटे का पॉडकास्ट देखने का टाइम नहीं है. ऐसा नहीं है. और वैसे भी कोई भी बैठ के, मतलब सब काम वाम छोड़ के 5 घंटे बैठ के ऐसे सुनता नहीं है पॉडकास्ट. 15 मिनट देखो, फिर कुछ काम कर लो, फिर वहीं से रिज्यूम कर लो, 1 घंटा देख लो, फिर अगले दिन वहां से रिज्यूम कर लो. वैसा ही देखते लोग. तो कॉन्वर्सेशन, नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन, कुछ भी एक इलेबोरेटली डिस्कस करते 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 आता है. तो वो रील्स में नहीं होगा. दादा, Hindu Cafe guy seems to be really, yeah, Hindu Cafe guy is brilliant. Ajit Bharti and Pulkit satire compliments, yeah. Ajit Bharti is an exemplary of Hindu discourse on cultural and political topics. His contribution is 90% impeccable. Yes, there are 3-4 hour streams of people just eating food. I think it's called mukbang, and such videos are huge views. Humanity is filled with stupidity. Uh, okay, if you are so fond of long-term content, why not write papers instead of podcasts? Because I'm not a writing person. I've rarely written in my life. The last thing I wrote was the 2 articles on Op India, because I like talking and conversing with people and explaining things on the with my mouth. And not everyone has, again, this skill, because there will be many people who are probably discussing live streams or discussing papers, uh, whom if you listen you'll probably bleed from your ears and stuff. I luckily don't have that problem. Maybe it's because so much into movies and stuff. I have worked professionally as a voiceover artist as well. All those things come together. राइटिंग का स्किल भी आ जाएगा. मगर राइटिंग में एक मेरा आई हैव वन प्रॉब्लम अगेंस्ट राइटिंग, बिकॉज मोस्ट पीपल टुडे डोंट रीड एनीथिंग, नो. तो राइटिंग से मैं जिन लोगों के पास जा पाऊंगा, वो भी मेरे लिए एसेंशियल ऑडियंस नहीं है. मेरे लिए एसेंशियल ऑडियंस है जो कि एटलीस्ट यूट्यूब पे आ रहे हैं. Yeah, let's start.
'Twas 11 years ago. I was but a wee lad watching the internet when I came across a YouTube video from Sargon of Akkad. And his gentle musings informed me of classical liberalism and great minds like Locke. And today, this man hates liberalism and is trying, I'm kidding, but we're here to debate the limits of liberalism and post-liberalism, because now there are many people who, like Carl, I suppose, how would you describe yourself? Post-liberal?
I would call myself a traditionalist, but I am a post-liberal, that's correct.
Post-liberal. And I've been reading more comments from people on X, seeing a lot of these debates, and finding myself in agreement with a lot of what post-liberals have been saying. I mean, actually watching your show and stuff for a long period of time. So this is what we're going to do today. We have the Lotus Eaters gentleman here with us as well, and Phil Labonte. So why don't we just start? You can do a quick introduction of who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Carl Benjamin. I'm the director of LotusEaters.com. I'm one of the hosts of the podcast The Lotus Eaters. And I finished a degree in philosophy last year because I wanted to get to the bottom of what it is that is actually causing all of the trouble in our political system. Because you'll notice that most countries that aren't liberal countries just don't have the problems that we have. And so I wanted to understand why we have the problems that we have. And I've come to the conclusion that I think it's liberalism itself that is at issue, because it's trying to bring about a world that has never existed and can never exist. And so we're constantly finding ourselves butting up against reality, against the ideals of liberalism. And I think there is a reasonable way that we can simply modify the ideals of liberalism to change the nature of it to more fit what we are and where we want to go.
All right. Connor's here as well.
Yes, Connor Tomlinson, also co-host over at LotusEaters.com. Host my own show, Tomlinson Talks, on Wednesday afternoons there. Occasionally pop up in various magazines and on the New Culture Forum and the like. If I were to describe myself, check my Twitter bio at Zuma Catholic Reactionary, in that order. And my main critiques, I think, will be leveled at the false anthropology of liberalism, namely the blank slate and the state of nature, and
फॉल्स एंथ्रोपोलॉजी, ये मुझे बढ़िया लगा था. मैंने जब पहली बार सुना ये 2-3 दिन पहले, कि मैंने तो एकदम डिसाइड किया था कि कभी और मतलब रिएक्शन वीडियोस नहीं करूंगा, मगर ये इतना बढ़िया डिस्कशन हुआ इसलिए मुझे करना पड़ा. हाँ, तो आई थिंक दिस इज वन ऑफ द बेस्ट पॉलिटिकल डिस्कशंस और एटलीस्ट पॉलिटिकल फिलोसफी रिलेटेड डिस्कशंस ऑन यूट्यूब आई हैव एवर सीन. तो ये जो ब्लैंक स्लेट आर्गुमेंट है, यही अमर्त्य सेन का भी आर्गुमेंट है आइडेंटिटी एंड वायलेंस नाम का वो बुक में, कि देखो तुम तो एक तरफ से मतलब आई एम अ मैन, I'm a man of this age, I'm a man of this state, I'm a man of this ethnicity, this country, this language, etc., this profession. तुम्हारे कितने सारे आइडेंटिटीज है, ठीक है, बहुमात्रिक परिचिति. तो उसमें से एक परिचिति तुम्हारा ये भी है कि तुम हिंदू हो. तो ये सिर्फ रिलीजियस आइडेंटिटी को लेकर इतना क्यों काहे फुदकना. तो तुम एक ब्लैंक स्लेट के तरीके से अपने आप को सोचो कि अब तुम खुद का अपना एक आइडेंटिटी बनाओ, या फिर कौन सा किस टाइम पे प्रायोरिटी देना है वो सोचो. तुम्हारा एक जो मात्रा है तुम्हारे इतने सारे आइडेंटिटीज में, वो एक मात्रा कैन नॉट बी योर एंटायर आइडेंटिटी. यू कांट बी जस्ट अ म्यूजिशियन, यू कांट बी जस्ट अ हिंदू, एटसेट्रा. बट सिंस अमर्त्य सेन occasionally, all of a sudden, I think from time to time ends up being fair, I guess I don't know what Amartya Sen is a very curious case, you know. I can't figure out whether he's just evil or a well-meaning academic who just has insane views. Because in this, while he's setting up this premise, there only he clearly mentions that at some points it is fair for you to prioritize one part of your identity over all else. Which means, if today you feel a threat from a particular religion, therefore you have to prioritize your religious identity, which was Savarkar's entire argument, which has been backed by Amartya Sen in his book Identity and Violence. So anyway, Amartya Sen is also in favor of this blank slate. You start from scratch. When you are born, your mother and father should not tell you that you are a Hindu or a man and stuff. You should create and find out and search and go on an adventure of your own finding your own self, etc.
how its attitude towards technology causes a antagonistic relationship with culture and creates a kind of revolutionary dynamism that mandates it homogenize everything to be undifferentiated human mass. As you can tell, I've got real...
ये जो homogenized identity of undifferentiated human mass, यही है equality, which is why diversity and equality in one sentence is absolutely grammatically insane, conceptually insane, metaphorically insane. It is an impossibility. It can't happen. Diversity is inherently unequal. Diversity happens because of inequalities. Okay, let's say you want a diverse crew for your office or let's say film production. How do you benefit because of that diversity? Let's say economic diversity first and foremost. You have a poor guy and a rich guy. That diversity is beneficial because both can learn something from each other. The rich man can learn from the poor man how he struggles, how he is poor and still goes on with his life, how he's trying to get richer. The poor man can learn from the rich guy how he became rich or his ancestors became rich and how he remains rich. What are his financial decisions? How disciplined a life does he lead? Okay, that is the benefit of diversity. What will be the benefits of racial diversity? What's good in your culture? I learn from it. What's bad in your culture? I don't do it in my culture. These are the benefits of diversity. और ये सब कुछ dependent है because they are not equal. That culture is not the same as mine, therefore not equal as mine. Your economic status is not the same as mine, hence we are diverse. So diversity and equality cannot work at the same time. Their equality inherently is an insane idea which creates this undifferentiated human mass.
Real joy about this.
And then Phil's here, of course.
I am Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I am an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary, and I am trying to understand why these two gentlemen, who I so strongly agree with on many points, believe that the seed of liberalism's destruction is in liberalism's.
By the way, guys, sorry for this interruption. This is Phil Labonte, vocalist of the metal band All That Remains, a heroic, legendary metal band who became famous in Kolkata even 2006, 7, 8 onwards.
Birth, and it is something that I'm struggling with. I'm not here to actually we cast this as a debate, but I'm really here to try to understand why they see the liberalism as they do, because I don't see the same promises in liberalism that you were talking about. So we can go ahead and get into this.
I think one way to really kick this off is that the other day when Carl first showed up, and I mentioned I was really excited for this conversation, Carl said he was excited to explain to Phil why he's a communist.
It was me that actually said
that was you?
Yes, it
Oh,
was.
sorry.
Carl's much more polite than I am.
Yeah, I'm much kinder about it.
So I know you're joking, but only half joking.
Yes.
How is someone who believes in liberalism actually well, first, the American word liberal, as it's often used, has nothing to do with liberalism.
Yes.
Only on the surface.
In what sense? Because I don't know if we agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that.
No, well, look, I can already see in my mind, you are correct where this goes in the long run. What I mean is if you go to the average person and say liberal or conservative, they're thinking a gray-haired woman wearing a Save the Whales shirt and a guy in a MAGA hat waving an American flag, and they have no concept of the underlying ideologies that bring those people to those positions. So when we say in the media, a liberal, they're basically saying someone who voted Democrat. And you could argue that is a function of what liberalism brought about. I'm saying that most of these people have no idea about the ideology, the underlying principles, and many of them would vote for Donald Trump, as we've seen with these man on the street interviews where they say, how would you feel about someone building a wall to secure the border? And they say, I'm for that. And you're a Democrat? Yes, I am. And okay, well, that was Trump's position.
Yeah.
And so people really, it just means tribe. But in the true sense of liberalism, how it got us to this point, the word actually, like, these voters do have a root in that. So let's just start from the beginning then. And why does liberal lead to communist, or where we want to begin?
So the issue is that liberalism makes two promises, which is liberty and equality. But the thing is, these are, of course, contradictory states. Any amount of liberty destroys any amount of equality, and any amount of equality destroys any amount of liberty. And so you would normally have to choose one or the other. But the problem that the liberals have is that the original liberals managed to harmonize these two things into the same position by creating a thought experiment called the state of nature. So in the state of nature, it was theorized by Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, Montesquieu, like Hegel, various others, that man must have existed at some point in a pre-social state. So it was individual men and women running around the woods, fighting off animals, eating acorns, things like that. And then they bump into each other, and depending on the sort of disposition of the theorist, would decide what they thought would happen in those interactions. And then each one has their own reason for why man decided, actually living in the state of nature is difficult or undesirable. Let's all get together and consciously choose to form a society. And from that point onwards, we can start deciding what kind of government we're going to have, what kind of constitution the state should have, and things like that.
Let me pause and just ask you a quick question.
Yes, that never existed, as Nandish is saying.
To elaborate, you said that liberty and equality contradict each other. Could you just give us a simple elaboration of what?
Yeah, 100%. So if I give everyone in the room $10 and I say, right, okay, now you're all equal, well, any amount of economic activity will make you unequal.
So what is it about? Right. How is it that liberalism makes a promise of equality? I understand, and it's my conception that it is the concept is equality under the law. I don't see where liberalism is making a promise of equality of results?
Because it has a false anthropology of fundamental human sameness. I mean, the direct quote from Locke is that before civilization, human beings existed in perfect freedom and perfect equality. So the idea is that until
He kind of deviated from the exact question. Phil Labonte was asking about there's no guarantee of equality of outcome, so why critique it or criticize it? He goes into saying, he takes the argument to that, see, the premise is kind of based on the equality of outcomes. So I guess, therefore, his argument is that maybe equality of outcome is the inevitable later demand when you've done liberalism long enough.
different states, until geographies, frankly, intervened, human beings, if they run out the same experiments, would produce the same outcomes. And so this sets up an antagonistic relationship with the liberal state as a kind of compromise. As Carl said, it depends on the disposition of the theorist as to why the state was formed. Rousseau thought it was out of envy. Locke thought it was out of a necessary compromise to secure property.
So then my disagreement would be that I don't agree with the preconceived notion in liberalism that there was a perfect state of nature where man was all equal. I do understand the idea, as in, if men were running around in the woods alone, all men would be
basically equal. Yeah.
Because of the conditions of reality. But that doesn't change the fact that even in that context, there would be different heights, different strengths, different abilities, and so
and different efforts, different amounts of willpower.
The fundamental, if the argument is that was the preconception, then I would say I reject that. That's wrong.
Well, so the liberal theorists agreed with you as well. They'd be like, well, yes, there would be different physical powers, but those physical powers would not be so great as to enable one man to, say, monopolize natural resources or something like that. If it's just one guy on his own in the woods, even if he's 10 feet tall and is capable of tearing down trees, he's not really any more, he doesn't really have access to very much more than a guy who's 5'5" and, just has to climb trees to get fruits or something, right? There's because equality in the pre-modern sense isn't really about physical equality. It's really about social equality, because the pre-modern societies are very stratified, very hierarchical. You're born into a social class, and that class comes with obligations and restrictions, limitations, and you will be born in the class and you will die in the class. And you are...
And he's using the word class because he, I guess, is not aware of the Max Weber kind of view that there are status groups and castes as well, but what he's describing actually applies for castes as well. Castes meaning not varna, jati varna system, but caste system as is the reality in every country, or has been a reality at some point or the other in every country.
Sort of held in this web of social relations, and I don't doubt that in its time that felt very oppressive to especially up and coming, intelligent, active, educated, middle class.
I want to interject one thing. I like the idea that society was created by man. I would reject that idea as well, because
this is a core theory of liberalism. The state of nature is that society is something that's rationally consented to, which is why it's called a social contract.
Yeah, but I mean, great apes have societies.
Yeah, no,
whether or not they're,
I totally agree. You're absolutely right.
Okay,
and this is where you get onto what Connor's saying about the false anthropology of it.
Okay.
It's not true. Man has never been a solitary animal.
And I agree with you guys about that. Then, so I think that maybe my disagreement here is my understanding of liberalism as opposed to what the way that you guys are linking. So it would be an incomplete understanding, because I'm not as versed. I haven't read as much Locke and stuff. So,
but you're completely correct that they're wrong on that, right? And the thing is, they didn't know that they were wrong on that, because of course we've got the benefit of 300 years of archaeology. Yeah, they didn't, so they had to assume, well, society can't always have existed, can it? Well, it turns out it actually has.
At least since before man.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever proto-humans existed but existed in groups.
And I would say very likely even before proto.
उत्सव एक बात बताओ तो लोटस ईटर पॉडकास्ट में इन दोनों ने क्या है, इंडिया के बारे में खराब बोला है कि हिंदुओं के बारे में? आई डोंट एग्जैक्टली नो. तो द प्रॉब्लम इज, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, दे आर intelligent enough to know at least this much, that Indians and Hindus are not the ones creating problems in their societies. It's somebody else. whom we can be united against. The problem is they bring up a criticism of India and Hinduism as a counter argument to their liberals, who are both white and Indian and Hindus and stuff, who are absolutely driving their countries down the drain. But those people are the ones who are those liberal chakra healing namaste hippies, okay, who say Hinduism teaches non-violence and peace all around. So therefore, I think many times these people bring up violences inside Hindu societies as a counter to those people. See, oh, you said Hinduism is so great. See, there's violence. Oh, you say every other country except Great Britain is great. See what's happening in India. Plus, they read conveniently commie sources even. But not all of them do that. And I think they are going to soon realize that their sources are wrong. Lotus Eater's podcast is obsessed with the greatness of white society. That's the end of it. Okay. I see.
So humans,
Yeah.
the organisms that
Yeah.
eventually come to be human existed.
100%.
And we can actually frame this two different ways. The first is 3 million years ago, whatever weird monkey-like creatures were social creatures.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you can also make the religious argument, if you believe in creationism, man was created as a social entity.
In the Garden of
Instantly.
Eden. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Well, so this is actually probably the easiest way to understand the anthropology of liberalism. They all kind of think of it as a Garden of Eden narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, Locke, if you think of the state of nature of man roaming around with perfect freedom and equality, it's essentially that nature provides. Locke thought it didn't provide enough, so therefore we had to enter a state which would guarantee your private property rights. Rousseau believed that Eden basically existed.
God dang, on this point, I'm not that bothered about, because too many Indians also believe in this. Okay, they do blame India and Hindus. Go check their videos. These come have said British Raj was extremely good for India and Hindus. Yeah, that's the general consensus that's taught everywhere in the world. Okay, it's not taught to in India, but people who get highly educated, even they believe this. And frankly, let's do a comparison. British Raj was better than the ones they replaced. And during British Raj, let's say, what are the staunch differences between British Raj before they became absolutely insane fascists? They were arresting everyone for anything and everything, keeping Savarkar under surveillance from 16 years onwards, from when Savarkar was 16 years old. So before that, what was the difference between today's Indian governance and the British governance? Can you point out too many differences, really? At least they had pro-nationalist, pro-India, pro-Hindu-twadi academics, historians. The best of pro-India research, high-level scholarship came out during the British Raj. They at least built bridges that did not break down after 1 month or 2 years. Okay. So,
even though he wasn't a Christian, and the first time man conceived of, he picked up this rock and said, "This is my rock," it introduced a kind of contaminated element into the human psyche. And so all of civilization was created to manage that envy and keep property unequal.
Many progressives and leftists, and they don't consider themselves liberals, have this belief that man was better off in the wilds, because the system was created by evil to oppress and control.
Well, so Rousseau believes that civilization kind of happened to man. So
yeah, famine after famine happened. I guess 3 or 4 famines happened. But remember, our starvation stopped only after this government came to power. Up until like even 15 years back or 20 years back, there were villages where people were eating ants and rats and stuff. Amla Shol, West Bengal. Okay. The system has adopted the worst of the British Raj, just the rulers have changed. Yes. Why does every ruler who comes to power in India keeps those exact same portions of the British Raj? ऐसा क्या रस है उसमें? ऐसा क्या मजा है उसमें? Well, how did the Nizam of Hyderabad become the richest man in the world, or one of the richest men in the world, when everyone else was getting poorer and poorer in Hyderabad?
You got Hobbes and Locke and various others who believe that man consciously came together. But Rousseau believes that it was an evolutionary process where it kind of just started accumulating without any kind of understanding. And this is why the sort of modern progressive left, the sort of Rousseauian left, they believe man is essentially the victim of society, because that's Rousseau's framing. Society happened to man. He didn't actually choose it. It just grew up around him, and now he's trapped in an evil society.
Rousseau is terrible.
Oh yeah, he's awful. But the point is, like, it frames modern social man as the victim of society, which isn't true. Of course, you know, it's the complete opposite. In fact, we're the beneficiaries of society.
Have you seen the argument from the leftists where they post these memes? Did you know that peasants in the medieval era had 100 days of vacation and only worked 4 hours a day? And plumb not true.
Yeah, obviously.
And absurd. And they also didn't have antibiotics, air conditioning, and helicopters.
So they act as if the peasants lived in a post-industrial society. Like, there was in the 70s, there was a TV show where they took like a dozen people and were like, right, you're going to live like someone in, like, you know, 700 AD or something like that. And all these people did is work. You know, they've got to stitch their own clothes. They've got to constantly look after the animals. They're constantly cleaning. They're constantly sewing. They're constantly, you know, preparing food, whatever it is. Everything takes a long time. So there's no such thing as a holiday. There's no such thing as time off. You know, things need to be done, even if you're not just plowing the fields. And so anyway, but yeah, so this is the fundamental problem with liberalism, is that it creates a mythology for itself, which is false, right? It never happened. It was never the case that man lived in this Garden of Eden state of nature. But what the problem with mythologies, well, not a problem, but one of the functions of mythology is that it sets the values of the civilization. It tells the civilization what is good. And that's why liberalism is constantly harping on about freedom and equality. These are the values of liberalism because they're set from the state of nature in the original position that man was supposed to be in.
Would you call Rousseau a product of liberalism?
He is
100%.
one of the architects of liberalism.
Really? Because I feel like he's far closer to a romantic.
Well, it doesn't mean he's not a liberal.
The romantics did come from.
Well, hold on a second. How can you be so? It's my understanding. I'm just trying to understand. It's my understanding that liberalism, as a product of the Enlightenment, says that we can contact reality, that we can reason. Romanticism rejects reason. Romanticism says that you should go to your emotions, and that's a better way to understand the world. Your reactions, your emotions, these are more real to people than reason. Because even Nietzsche was saying that his man's most fallible faculty is reason, because when you reason, you are without a doubt capable of being wrong because you don't have enough information, you don't have the capacity to reason properly or whatever. So from my understanding, Rousseau as a romantic, and this is something, and this is the way I'm only talking about what I see it. So Rousseau as a romantic is far closer to what we see today on the social justice left than would be any other kind of Enlightenment philosophy, because the left rejects the ability to. They think that power comes from words as opposed to being able to reason and being able to argue from a place of charity.
So Rousseau is 100% a liberal. He begins with liberal priors. He constructs his philosophy rationalistically. He just has a different interpretation. And I don't know what definition you're using for a romantic, but I would say he was more idealistic about what he thinks the state of nature would have been like. It's he
wanted savages made to live in cities. I understand that part. Yeah,
but he thought the state of nature was a lot more kind than it actually would have been to mankind. Right? Hobbes would have been, if man had lived in a state of nature, Hobbes was the one who was right on the money on this. Or what's the other guy's name? Not Montesquieu. There's another chap who basically came to the same, a French chap who came to the same conclusion as Hobbes, where man would be flighty. Every time he'd heard a stick snap in the woods, he'd just run away because he'd be afraid, right? And it was very much with the Hobbesian, his life would be nasty, brutish, and short. It would be violence, it would be death, it would be difficult, because that was what living on your own in a woodland would be like, right? Rousseau, for some reason, thought man would just be wandering around plucking fruit off the trees and, living in idle contemplation.
Everything was the garden.
Sounds like every leftist.
Yeah, exactly. But they still begin from the same thought experiment, with the same a priori assumption that this was how things were. And since this must have been the man in the pre-social state of nature, why did he come together into a society, and what should that society look like from those presuppositions? So Rousseau is 100% a liberal.
If I can go off that a little bit. So I did actually study the Romantics because I was silly enough to take English at university.
But it's important, though.
It is, yes. We shouldn't have abandoned that field to Rousseauians, funnily enough, the Romantics saw the epistemology of emotional intuition as the way to repeal what was getting in the way of man's authentic consciousness. And so if Rousseau starts with the same anthropology as Locke, that they were in the state of nature, he's just a bit more optimistic about it, then that means everything that's come after the state of nature is a deterioration from source. And what he's seeking to do is have the state emulate the same conditions as the state of nature. And so he thinks that if we've grown up in the state and that's moved us away from our original pre-civilizational existence, then reasoning based on those priors isn't going to get us anywhere. It's just that emotions and intuitions are the more authentic apparatus for getting back to the same anthropology he shares with Locke. And I think what you're identifying is, it sounds a lot like Marx. It sounds a lot like forced consciousness.
Absolutely.
It's because Marx basically plagiarized Rousseau. There's a reason why the final line of the Communist Manifesto, the workers have nothing to lose but their chains, apes the opening line of Rousseau, which is that man is born free and is everywhere in chains. They share a lot of those similarities, and this is why, and this is something we'll get onto later, that's why the communists are always nipping at the heels of the liberals, because fundamentally they share the same anthropology, that all underneath we're fundamentally equal, we have the same fundamental natural rights, and it's civilization that is getting in the way of us realizing our egalitarian natures.
I agree, man is born free, but there's
It's not.
But that's not true, though.
But well, it just depends on what you mean by free. And what I'm going to say is, when Marx says they have nothing to lose but their chains, what it means to be unchained is to be separated from society, the privileges, the benefits, and the responsibilities. To be born free of those things also means to be in a downward state where you will likely succumb to death. So the way I tried to explain it, certainly outside of the confines of philosophical understanding and great writers, when I talk to my friends, because I'm like a teenager, I'm like, dude, why don't you go try living in the middle of the woods buck naked and see how you like it? Like, be free as you want to be. No support, no help, no making your clothes, no plastics, no computers.
Bro, I don't want to walk outside barefoot half the time.
And so what I would say to them, you know, for a lot of my friends who are always complaining about something, I said, you need to understand that you live in this great privilege of society with roads, with protection, with police, all of these things. Go in the middle of the woods, buck naked, you're at zero. And without society, without family, without community, you are slowly going to die. And actually, very quickly, I should say, slowly, but now imagine you're in the middle of the woods, completely buck naked, but you have a pointy stick. That is a step up from being totally nothing. To separate the workers from their chains is to say, go into the woods with absolutely nothing. That's your freedom.
The chains are the social bonds that tie us together. So when Rousseau says man is born free but everywhere is in chains, what he's saying is man is an atomized individual who should be alone in the woods.
Right.
But for some reason he's born into the civilization. But in reality, that's just not the case. You're born as the son of parents. You're born in a country. You're born in a community. You are born to a social network. You are not born free. Nobody is born free. And what good would freedom do to a baby anyway? You know, it would be the freedom to literally starve or freeze to death, right? It was
in a day, not even.
not even a
like
day.
Rousseau and Marx's own children.
Well, one quick point too. Don't babies die if they don't get touch?
Yeah.
Yeah, human contact.
Yeah.
This happened in
100%.
Ceausescu's Romanian orphanages. Loads of kids died of neglect, not because they weren't fed or had water, just because they had no adult contact.
Yeah.
And as a somewhat aside, I wonder what causes that. I would surmise perhaps evolution.
By the way, saying that liberalism is not equal to Marxism, their argument is that it seems so, or it ends up leading to those things.
So obviously some sort of evolutionary necessity. But the point is, like, everything about liberalism's presuppositions about what it is to be a human are just wrong. They're just wrong, you know.
I think it's interesting because we see one of the highest rates of mortality is just after retirement. Babies that don't receive human contact also die. Humans so. I wonder if this is a component of evolution where if a society, if a person had aged to a point where
the premises are same. Why I like this video, ये screen पे क्यों नहीं आ रहा है? हाँ, तो why I like this discussion is because it criticizes the premises of liberalism, which I agree with, which are the same premises of Marxism as well. कि वो Idealism जिसको बोलते हैं कि सब बढ़िया था, सब लोगों के बीच में प्यार मोहब्बत था, पीस था, प्रॉस्पेरिटी था, छुट्टियां थे, कम वर्किंग आवर थे, सब चिल्ड आउट थे. अचानक एक दिन आसमान से कैपिटलिज्म टपक पड़ा, पेट्रियार्की टपक पड़ा, सोसाइटी टपक पड़ा, और तब से शुरू हुआ चुतियापा। एक दिन अचानक सुबह वर्ण व्यवस्था चालू हो गया, एक दिन सुबह अचानक से कैस्टिज्म शुरू हो गया। ये सब एक दिन अचानक से वाला आर्ग्यूमेंट से मुझे प्रॉब्लम है। तो दे आर critiquing that kind of premises that everything was good, man was independent and happy. No, they never were.
Where they were no longer contributing. Their survival would be a detriment to the remaining tribe, who would have to do extra work to maintain something.
Okay, अभय ने ये 3 बार पूछा है, तो देख लेते हैं। Will that not change our non-Abrahamic character? That itself is a loss. Completely नहीं। Like I say, अभय, हमारा तो यूनिटी होने वाला नहीं है कभी, ठीक है? तो if there is a हिंदुत्वा wing inside Hinduism, I would like to call it a sect inside Hinduism, a socio-political sect who just fights the culture wars. Okay, the very notion itself can be Abrahamic. Their existence, their game plans can be Abrahamic. They are the ones who will be standing between the Abrahamics versus this unabrahamized rest of Hindu society. We will have to use Abrahamic ways of playing the game so that this entire thing does not become Abrahamic. And if you consider this to be part of the whole, then yes, a portion of it is going to be Abrahamic. You'll have to apply Abrahamic rules. This idea that we're talking about with Mysterious Sociologist, we are talking about putting people in positions of power in academia who are not commies. Think of it. Let's say if you're a completely abstract, neutral person looking at these demands, wouldn't you think that's an evil demand? That you're talking about academic capture. Why shouldn't people be hired just on the basis of their skills and knowledge, etc.? Why do you not want to hire commies? What if they can also do good scholarship? So we are going to use the same things that commies have done, and that is part of winning the Abrahamic game with Abrahamic tactics. यही करना है. Or if we go down history far enough, we will see that has always happened. There might not be anything Abrahamic about everything that we are considering Abrahamic.
That is not doing anything in return. And a baby without touch is also it's like self-terminate, essentially. This is a net negative. There's no positive. I wonder if that's an evolutionary thing about social construct, our social connection.
Yeah, it could well be, but I don't know. But the point being, though, the liberal assumptions about all of this was just incorrect, right?
Right.
Man is a deeply social creature and needs social contact, and we know this. We know this because what's the second worst punishment you can inflict on someone? Ostracism.
Solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement. It is the worst thing you can do, other than simply hanging them. Right. And we know this. So we know that everything about liberalism being like, right, okay, well, actually, we used to live in the Garden of Eden and we used to be on our own, and that's where things were perfect. That's not correct. And it's also not a desirable goal at all. Because this is why the mythology of liberalism is the poison that is the problem, the constant liberation from contingency.
This is what I like about this discussion. The constant myth, the falsities.
Everything you should have all the time, whenever you feel like it, regardless of what anyone else thinks. That's actually terrible.
I agree.
Anand, do they demand social contract, or they assume that there is already a social contract? Social contract is a reality. It's an inevitability. That is the premise.
And I would say the way you've explained not being born free, I would completely agree as well. Right? You are born into a country with laws, and there are responsibilities to you, and you reach a certain age, you then have responsibilities back. Those chains of society
100%.
have always been there.
Yeah.
Unless you were born in the middle of the woods and your mom ran away, and then you got eaten by wolves.
Yeah.
I believe it was St. Augustine who said it's not that we're born free and equal, it's that we're born in urine and excrement. In the sense, we're born inextricably contingent on everyone around us who is compelled to make sacrifices to take care of us. This is why when you had Katie Faust on your show a while ago with my good friend Jeff Younger, she said civilization is healthiest when everything is reoriented around caring for those who get the absolute least say into the position that they are born in, because they cannot consent to the parents that they choose. They can't choose their parents. Therefore, the parents must act as if they could have chosen, and they would have chosen them.
I maybe a simpler way. I suppose society it grows great when it is built around caring for children.
Yeah.
And we are now here in the United States, and to what degree?
Anand has brought up a good point here that you cannot have a liberal state without the establishment of a social contract between citizens and the state. Here, epistemology comes in. So now the Indian culture, as we know it, accepted a constitution which made changes to, let's say, things that would be considered evil today, right? And many societies did not evolve. Many societies corrected themselves. Many societies got corrected. Many societies have not corrected even today, which means different societies are different, right? So what you are pointing out is that establishment of a social contract between citizens and state. So हमारा social contract एक है with the state. I don't think there is one with a centralized state, but there is a specific kind of a social contract even in Hinduism and in Hindu society. But it has probably almost nothing to do with liberalism or social contract theory as Europeans understand it, or today's liberals understand it. There lies the problem. So the entire nation state model is a parallel thing going on with our Hindu social contract model also. Now I won't call for a disbandment of this nation state and all. I think this nation state forming has been a good thing because again we live in an Abrahamized society. The world has been Abrahamized. Now nation states are a thing. We can't really do anything by being anti-federalist today. But the negotiation and conversation between the Hindu social contract and the European social contract theory, that needs to get louder, if at all there is one. I don't think there is one too many much. I think there are some starting points today. There are some baby steps that we are trying to at least or we are ending up noticing that there is in fact a different social contract, because up until now we have spent so much time just criticizing casteism and sati pratha and hating just upper caste or just Brahmins for these things, so that we have not gotten to the bottom of the problems, and we have not been able to solve those problems. We have ended up creating more problems, whereas while it was going on, we could have solved the entire problem of this nation state being at loggerheads with a different society. So how do we end discrimination? Not just caste, of course, anything, any problem. How do we end discrimination? By convincing people or by incentivizing them to not do those things. Okay, ये सब के बारे में तो conversation हो ही नहीं रहा है. सबको लग रहा है कि वो एक law बना देंगे और सब एकदम भोसड़ी वाले एकदम law follow करने लगेंगे. So like someone said when Trump got shot, liberals immediately started saying now might be a good time to outlaw guns. And someone commented that how about we outlaw assassinations? Oh wait, assassinations are illegal. They still happen. तो तुम law से क्या उखाड़ लोगे भाई? तो when Indian Hindu society, the majority, accepted this constitution, they thought that yeah, fine. It does not seem that much at loggerheads with our society, and maybe it had some modifications done to their understanding of Hinduism as well because of Bonkim, Rajaram Mohan Roy, etc. But in the end, we accepted this country. Overwhelmingly, people accepted this structure of this country. That says something about this society as well. But some problems are just not going away at all. उसके लिए अब हमको और चीजें ढूंढना पड़ेगा.
In the UK or Europe, I'm not. You guys can answer that one, but we are a society for the elderly now.
Yeah.
Our government is run by the oldest.
This is a great point. ये फालतू की बात है, तुम वेस्ट बंगाल में आके बोलो, ठीक है?
For the oldest who refuse to give up power. The advocacy is do not have children. Children are bad. Children should be aborted. Is no longer a society being oriented around children, and thus it's going to implode.
You see, we're in exactly the same position, and you see this most right in and this is Jack Posobiec's favorite thing, and he's totally right about this. The fact that McDonald's is not a family restaurant anymore.
हाँ, तो तुम अभी तुम्हारे घर के सामने अगर तृणमूल 10 आदमी लेके खड़ा हो जाए, तुम क्या उखाड़ लोगे? हाँ, क्या है तुम्हारा डिफेंस? इसीलिए तुमको तो नाम रखना पड़ता है रा, डीपी में है वुल्फ. मेरे जैसे थोबड़ा दिखा के चैनल खोलो, तब समझ में आएगा तुमको.
No, I'm not even joking.
I know. The
Think about it when
playground.
you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
It would be very bright, very colorful. You know,
You put your shoes in the thing to go in the.
We had birthday parties in the downstairs basement bit.
Yeah. You know, and you'd have like an outdoors bit with the slide and stuff like that. And now it looks just like some sort of dystopian black monoliths.
Brutalist.
Yeah.
Burger facility.
Yeah, exactly. Come and get your burger. You used
This is a brilliant point. That we don't. I think India में ये problem अभी तक उतना नहीं आया है. Cities में थोड़ा बहुत आ गया है. कि as a society we are not incentivizing, at least I mean encouraging people to have children. कि पहले क्या था कि मतलब अच्छा तुम्हारा एक बच्चा है तो you are the king of the office and society, तुम्हारे लिए extra छुट्टी वगैरह सब मंजूर, that kind of a behavior. So that he's pointing out that today America has kind of become a society for the old, of the old, by the old, and not about specifically for families, of the families, for the families, by the families and stuff. Incentivizing family life, incentivizing. तो अभी देखो कर्नाटका में बोल रहे हैं कि 14-hour work week लीगल कर देंगे. कहाँ होगा 14-hour work week के बाद फैमिली लाइफ? और मतलब सिर्फ एक कम्युनिटी का एक सेक्शन, मेजर टैक्स पेइंग सेक्शन ही वो करेगा 14-hour work week नहीं, 14 hour per day. तो उसका ही फैमिली लाइफ गड्ढे में जाएगा. बाकी लोगों का जिसका इसके साथ लेना देना नहीं, उनका पॉपुलेशन, फैमिली लाइफ सब बढ़िया रहेगा.
useless eater number 3,1272. You know, it's like
It's simple logic. Less guns would not incentivize crimes that deal with guns. Yes, and Mickey Mouse would have killed Batman.
it's a
Pizza Hut.
yeah, exactly. You know, it's
Jack talks about Pizza Hut nationalism.
yeah.
He's completely correct.
I'm completely on it. The civilization used to be focused around families with children.
Yes.
Right? That's what it used to be focused around. And now it's focused around single adults
Right.
who've got just, wage jobs, who hate their lives, who just want to get their burger just before they kill themselves.
Not just
This is, I think, an accurate description of any major tech hub sort of cities in India.
there's a proliferation. This is something I've noticed particularly about America, of sort of homeless vagrant drug addicts. I wrote about this recently for the European Conservatives. They are the last man of liberalism. I think this is why you're seeing anarcho-tyranny on American streets. It's because, as you said, if you have an on-demand desire all the time, that is the true and authentic expression of your individual freedom. And anyone asserting a standard, even if it's loving concern for the addiction you have, is an incursion on that freedom. So what you need is like a TSA-style government that oversees all relationships and ensures that at no point are you impinged upon by someone else's expectations. So the government, and this is how it mutates from Locke to Rousseau, from limited government as the founders intended to a totalitarian government. It's that on the premise that we are born free and equal, and there are very own.
ये है आनंद श्रीधर, तुम्हारा क्रिटिसिज्म लेजिट लग रहा है मुझे, मगर मैं इनके साथ अग्री कर रहा हूं वो प्रेमिस के वजह से. जो प्रेमिस के वजह से आज का जो पागल तरह का लिबरलिज्म है वो इनएविटेबल था बिकॉज ऑफ दीज प्रेमिसेस.
Own relationships and our own parents and their expectations are incursions on our freedom. The government has to step in to ensure that no interaction ever stops that. And so you sleeping on the street or in the doorway of a CVS shooting up heroin and ODing and no one caring for you is actually the vision of your total freedom.
Yeah, there's no one more free than that to indulge the desires of their own will
To their death.
to the death. And it's from a non-liberal perspective, it's complete evil. But it's not a coincidence that in every place that the Democrats end up running, they end up going, well, we need to provide those people with needles.
And the
They need
Taliban walk in
yeah,
and then they withdraw it.
but that makes the Taliban in the right on this issue. No, responsible adults who care about the people around them.
तुम ये अपना थोबड़ा दिखा के अपने नाम से आके कंजर्वेटिव बनो ना, उसके बाद तुम्हारा बात सुनेंगे हम.
Should step in and say, no, we're taking the drugs away. You don't need this. You need rehab. You need to get your life back on track. That's the non-liberal perspective.
I
सुनो, बड़े एंटी गन भोसरी वाले, तुम सुनो, एक बात बताओ, एग्जैक्टली क्या प्रॉब्लम है तुम्हारा? तुम ऐसा क्या बोल रहे हो जिसके वजह से तुमको कोई प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है? तुम्हारा नाम और डीपी क्यों नहीं है? एग्जैक्टली क्यों नहीं है? तुम्हारा नौकरी चला जाएगा? क्या है प्रॉब्लम? बोलो. नौकरी से निकाल देगा तुम ये सब बोलोगे तो? नौकरी से ही इतना डर है तो नौकरी से निकालना इलीगल कर देते हैं और देखते हैं उसके बाद तुमको कौन नौकरी से निकालता है या नहीं निकालता है. ठीक है, ऐसा एक कानून लाते हैं जिससे कि तुम यूट्यूब में अगर राइट विंग बनते फिरो तो तुम्हें नौकरी से नहीं निकाला जा सकता है. ठीक है, तो तुम नाम दिखाओगे तो, मुंह दिखाओगे तो, Or is there a law already like that? Isn't it? Do you fear the law? Do you fear your company? Or do you fear your police? Or do you fear your political gundas? Or do you fear your state? नाम और मुंह क्यों नहीं है? बताओ exactly. Why should I? Most online chatters prefer being anonymous. और वो ये जो prefer being anonymous for absolutely no reason, यही पागल का argument liberal कॉमी feminist women देते हैं कि I show my gigantic cleavage for no reason. I don't care about men's attention. Signal theory नाम का कोई भोसरी का चीज नहीं है. मैं तो ऐसे ही अपना boobs दिखा रहा हूँ. मैं तो ऐसे ही मेकअप डालता हूँ. मैं अगर एक uninhabited island में अभी stranded होता, तब भी मैं इतना सच धज के ही निकलती. यह है तुम्हारा argument. You are doing something for a reason. And if you think there is no reason, if it's random, even that is a reason. But just think harder and come up with a reason. Okay? You are a very lazy thinker. You don't think through things, okay? You just think something is just Western, something is just Indian, something is just US conservative. Think harder about these things.
You know, this is an interesting argument in that relates to gender dysphoria. Matt Walsh, his position has been there should be no sex change surgery for anyone. Doesn't matter how old you are.
Yes.
And many of the classical liberals, the middle of the road, disaffected liberal types who have now said, I'm voting for Trump, take the position, well, no. If you're an adult, you can choose to do what you want to do. Yeah. And I think that makes an interesting argument. And I've asked people this question as well. I mean, if someone went to a doctor and said, I'm body dysmorphic, I want my hand removed, would you remove it? And everyone says no. I said, okay, then what's the moral difference between someone's reproductive organs and their hand?
Should we let an anorexic get liposuction? Or should we say, no, you're deluded and we should save your life and prevent you from making this irreversible decision? And
simply, no.
Yes.
You should not say you're deluded. We have to say, you get my point.
Well, you have a mental,
exactly.
You have a mental disorder.
You have a
you need help.
Miscalibrated perception about yourself. And this is quite a deeply personal issue to me, because I've had friends that have fallen afoul of this and are now sterile and fertile and have complications. And they themselves said, okay, I was above the age of 18 at the time, but was I compos mentis?
Yeah. Anand, ये बात तो है बिल्कुल कि look at the difference between the strict and well-defined ideologies of the American founding fathers and the crap thought leaders of the American left and right. Yeah. There's a huge gap between them. Only I think Vivek comes close.
No.
This is really interesting as it pertains to the idea of chains of society. What are the chains of society? When you are born, you will be fed. You'll be taken care of. Either your parents must do it. We have an apparatus of the state to try and step in when that is not the case. Yep. But you look at everything that is coming about through Democrats, the left. I'm sure it's the same in Europe. Mm-hmm. It is breaking the chains, quite literally, to the point where children are being aborted and killed and treated as things. Prominent leftist YouTubers. I asked Vosh, when does a baby become a human? He said, some point after birth. It is quite literally removing the humanity from a person and taking away to what end?
But that's all liberalism can do, right? Liberalism is the breaker of chains, the breaker of these relationships between people.
Yes. And Anand has brought up a very important point here. He's saying Vivek knows this stuff, but because his audience is too dumb to know, he tells them what they want to hear. Vivek does this. That the idea that it was a Judeo-Christian values that has created USA, or USA was born with Judeo-Christian values, or the idea that those rights to religious freedom and stuff, it was for every religion of all over the world. Aisa nahi tha. And Vivek knows that. People like Alexander Hamilton, who were one of the people who wrote the Federalist Papers, they had, I think he or Thomas Jefferson himself, who wrote the Anti-Federalist Papers, or was an Anti-Federalist. I don't remember if he wrote it. I think Patrick Henry wrote the Anti-Federalist Papers. So they had clarified that, see, words lose their meanings after a few years. Different words have different meanings in different eras. तो हम अभी जो लिख रहे हैं ये हमारे आसपास का कॉन्टेक्स्ट में है, ये हर कॉन्टेक्स्ट में एप्लीकेबल नहीं है. तो so Vivek absolutely knows this. Vivek knows it was not a country founded on Judeo-Christian principles. It was specifically a Protestant country with very Protestant ethics, morality. So even the right to freedom, practice different religions and stuff, my hunch is it was absolutely meant for the different sects of Christianity, not each and every religion in the world. And that different races can come here and live, etc. वो ये लोग लिख रहे थे 1780s में, और इमिग्रेशन यूएसए में खोल दिया गया सबके लिए 1965 के बाद. So the context is completely different. Today, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, no one would probably be okay with USA's demographics going to complete hell. And more importantly, wait, I forgot the point. I'll come back to it later. There's another fun point to make here.
I mean, this is so contingent in its DNA that all it has is a negative.
Yeah, another thing I want to point out is that when JFK was becoming the candidate for president, the talk, the murmurs, the headlines were that, is America ready for a Catholic president? Okay, so America is that Protestant in its core. तो ये Judeo-Christian principle विवेक जो बोलता है, ये सब सिर्फ he is being a politician. बट उसका ट्रेनिंग है, तो ट्रेनिंग इतना ही है कि वो जानता है कब किसको क्या बोलना भी है, मगर उसका मतलब एक्चुअल रियलिटी क्या है वो भी विवेक को पता है.
Negative vision for when essentially you will be completely on your own. It can't build anything.
This is really fascinating. The way Marx describes chains, the way the left describes chains, is they want you to imagine a slave master having you chained, as opposed to chains holding up a bridge.
Yeah. That's a great analogy actually, because it's. I mean, they use chains, but
someone was pointing out that there was तो उसके पहले भी immigration हुआ था. Gangs of New York. Yes, I have seen Gangs of New York. They had trouble with Irish people. They had huge problems with Italians. In fact, the kind of problems they see with Muslims today is the kind of problems they faced with Italians as well, because only the criminal Italians were coming to USA first and foremost, which is why if you criticize Muslims today, people will say that commies of America say that, what, you guys are just being racist because you all the racists of yesteryears hated Italians for the same reasons, and today Italians are so well integrated, so you are hating Muslims also for the same reasons, but they will just integrate a few years later. But Italians were not going around doing shenanigans all over the world. वो तो एक अलग बात है. तो Italians के साथ इनका प्रॉब्लम था कि पहली बात तो ये कैथोलिक है, उसके बाद ये ज्यादातर क्रिमिनल्स ही है, आके पूरा का पूरा हर जगह में इटालियन माफिया हो गया, वो सब प्रॉब्लम था. तो जूडियो क्रिश्चियन वैल्यूज कुछ नहीं था.
Like you say, chains have got a constructive function as well, right?
Yeah.
They literally lift things into place. And all of the moral good in society is really found in our relationships, right? I mean, what does being a moral person mean when you're not interacting with other people?
The coma test is a useful way of saying that. So you can't commit rape, theft, assault, and murder if you're in a coma. Brilliant, but does that make you a moral person? No, it makes you neutral. It takes proactive, virtuous action to be considered moral, and you can only do that if there's another interlocutor.
Yeah, I mean, if you were stranded on a desert island, being a good or bad person just doesn't make sense. There's no one to be good or bad towards.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the problem with the social contract society. Who was it that described it as a society of rational devils? Can you remember?
I can't remember. It might have been C.S. Lewis, but I'm not sure.
No. I think it was. I thought
it was a Screwtape Lewis's quote.
I think it was like Voltaire or something. But one of the liberal thinkers said, "Look, what we're going to do is we're going to create."
Kant.
That was Kant. Right. So Kant again is a great example of this, where he's trying to create a framework that is a rational framework that any rational being should be able to consent to. So, I've got a series of rights, a series of restrictions on myself and obligations to the state, and therefore I could have a society of rational devils who could all live peaceably because of the social contract. And this, I mean, the United States is a social contract society, right? So theoretically, you should have a society that could function from, a society of rational devils. But I actually don't want to live in a society of devils, actually.
I agree.
Why would you want that? So what is the goal here? Why do we want to make devils someone we can live alongside? Can't I live alongside good and virtuous people?
And this is why the French Revolution failed and the American Revolution.
Ninada has asked a brilliant question here. Do you think US is a made-up country like Bangladesh or Pakistan? I had not thought about it, but might be so, I think a prerequisite for a country is a very distinct set of people with very distinct set of ideas. So since they had their kind of agnostic, deist, Protestantism sort of a base for founding America, which was very, very distinct from England, etc. But it was sort of made on such tantrums that I guess therefore it's going to hell so soon. no country. Some countries face bad times, and then I mean, they exist. Their entire character changes, but USA as we know it, which was created in 1776, is not going to remain very soon. It's going to hell absolutely pretty soon. So maybe if USA does exist 100 years from now with these same laws, then I would say they were not a made up country. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, if USA remains, I would say they were not a made up country, and their morals, laws were that strong that they could sustain a different country on its own. But so far, what we are seeing is that they were so delicate, they were so vulnerable, that it took just 2-3 generations, I would say 65 onwards, to completely screw their country.
Succeeded. One of
Yes.
many reasons is because actually the American Constitution, the social contract, is subordinate to the fact that you were formulated from a time, a place, particular people, and a faith. And all of the underlying assumptions of the Constitution were baked in by the authors. But as the demographics change, as religion wanes, you're no longer living by these thick bonds of sentiment and Christian faith. You're living up and according to the letter of the law. And if they don't believe in the original sentiment that wrote the law, then it just becomes, how do we quickly circumvent this and establish an elite class that can apply the law selectively?
There's like 800 layers to go through right now that I'll try to get as quickly as I can. Are you familiar with cut flower politics?
Yes,
Coined by
Dennis
Dennis
Prager's.
Prager.
No, I'm not.
He says you have this beautiful flower and you cut it from its base and hold it in the air and everyone can see how beautiful it is, but it has been cut from its root and it will die.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening to us now. And so I one day decided to read about the Bill of Rights, why the Constitution contains them. And do you, and you should know this, do you know why we have the 4th, 5th, 6th amendments and what those are to the Bill of Rights?
No, go.
No,
Lawful certain seizure, isn't it?
right to a speedy trial, right to confront your accuser, things like that.
But these are all just from English law.
But do you know what the actual the root idea from the founding fathers, where they said that should be enshrined, was? It's actually really simple, and you know,
Well, go on.
Blackstone's formulation.
Oh,
yeah,
I mentioned
what-
this last night, yes.
And Benjamin Franklin said it is better that 100 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer.
Sure.
And the reason was, we need these enshrined in the Constitution to guarantee the rights, because we know government can run afoul. We've witnessed this. The reason these rights must be protected is that a society that a citizen who believes that even if he is a good person who abides by the rules of society and law, if they believe they will be improperly prosecuted, imprisoned, or punished, they have no incentive to be a good person. In fact, quite the opposite. They will lie, cheat, and steal to protect themselves from a corrupt system. Therefore, the system must always persevere to protect the innocent, so that they always try to be their best selves. And of course, Blackstone's formulation, Sodom and Gomorrah, rooted in the Bible. The United States, foundation of its constitution, its governance, its moral worldview, was rooted in Christianity.
And an English interpretation of that Christian.
Absolutely.
Because all of these things that you're saying are just earlier precedents from English law, like habeas corpus and various.
Absolutely. And our attempts to better understand it and and with the Constitution be like,
Properly enshrine it.
right, we're going to enshrine this as best so we really understand, which brings me back to the cut flower politics and Bill Maher. Bill Maher's a liberal.
Yes.
Bill Maher says, why can't I smoke pot and sleep around? What's the problem? See, someone like Bill Maher is that flower.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful. It expresses these ideas, but it has no connection to what actually brought it to that point. A man who says he's an atheist, and more power to him, it's fine. Live how you want to live, I guess. But my point is, with that ideology, what that results in is abject chaos and the dissolution of social order. So this man, Bill Maher, who will go on TV and say, but I believe in free speech, but I believe in these things. He doesn't understand that the root ideology for which he was raised in is Christian moral structure.
Yeah.
On that point, he went and did a interview with our friends at Trigonometry, and he was celebrating the fact that London is now minority English. And what he doesn't understand, and this is an outgrowth of liberal philosophy as well, is that you can't have civil.
Has Bill Maher celebrated the fact that London is now minority English? Why would he celebrate it? I mean, what's objectively good or bad about white people or English people being a minority in London? What was Bill Maher's argument there? Does anyone know?
civilization in amber. You can't have values and principles dislocated from the peoples that formulated them, because they are the only ones who have enshrined those values in their hearts and minds. As de Maistre said, a constitution is just the codification of what the authors thought, and you can't make people live according to those things if they don't believe what it was originally there. And so all these principles that he advocates for free speech and license to not be judged for being a pot-smoking degenerate, suddenly, if you import millions of Islamic followers, Muslims, into Britain, those values go away. The constitution has changed. And so Bill Maher may well appeal to this, but under the rubric of liberalism, he is doing what Renaud Camus called the second career of Adolf Hitler. And that is, in the name of making a nation after the Second World War prove its anti-racist credentials and be open and free and tolerant to prevent the guard towers of Auschwitz from being reconstructed, he's actually imported the values of another country who doesn't believe in this and has the exact same thing happen all over again.
If I can overly simplify that into a meme millennials would
Nandish, brilliant point. This is what I was about to reply to when someone asked that, what is Christian morality? Did you only ask it? Someone asked, what is, Shekhar asked, what is Christian morality? What Christian morality is, as we know it today, is basically just European Roman sort of morality, kind of modified, because again, that one fine morning this happens, ऐसा तो नहीं होता है. तो जहां पे क्रिश्चियनिटी पहुंचा, क्रिश्चियनिटी गया तो भाई मिडिल ईस्ट से, तो वहां का जो एग्जिस्टिंग कल्चर्स था उसके साथ ही उसका कॉन्वर्सेशन हुआ, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ, रेजोल्यूशन हुआ, वो एंटीथेसिस से वो सिंथेसिस से निकला, वही है. तो अब अभी क्रिश्चियन मॉरलिटी क्या है, या बाद में भी क्रिश्चियन मॉरलिटी क्या होगा, जैसे कोई भी चीज का, व्हाट इज पॉपुलर म्यूजिक, व्हाट इज हिंदू मॉरलिटी, ये सब डिपेंड करता है कि उस ग्रुप में कौन सबसे बड़ा डंडा लेके घूम रहा है, उसका ही बात सब लोग मानने लगेंगे. तो क्रिश्चियन मॉरलिटी मोर ऑफन देन नॉट एज वी नो इट टुडे इज जस्ट आई गेस ब्रिटिश मॉरलिटी. तो रशियन ऑर्थोडॉक्सी फक्सी तो बहुत ही अलग है ओवरऑल क्रिश्चियन मॉरलिटी से. So what Nandish is saying here, that whole Christian theology is made up, not even the cultural values are its own. Mostly the cultural values are different cultural values of those pre-Christian societies of that particular area.
would understand. It's Sideshow Bob stepping on the rake and smacking himself in the face over and over again and going.
So there are a couple of points there that I want to just pick up on as well. So first on the rational devils thing.
So Shekhar, so Christian morality might be a not exactly a word salad, but it's, I guess, an incomplete, lazy phrase to use, but which is why Sargon of Akkad pointed out that the British interpretation of Christianity, that would be a more accurate thing to say.
What I hate about this kind of view is the prejudice against irrationality and the privileging of rationality. And I'm sure you've all read Jonathan Haidt, who pointed out, well, hang on a second, you're actually not very rational for very much of your day.
Most of the time you're not.
There we go, perfect.
I pulled up the Moral Foundations a while ago.
Perfect.
Jonathan
Haidt has proven, look, most of what you do is actually quite irrational, quite habitual, and it's only when you have to stop and think and deliberate very, very carefully that you become rational for a small period of time. So a society of rational devils would have to be rational quite a lot of the time. And so this social contract only holds until some guy who might not be terribly intelligent decides, you know what, I don't care. I'm not going to be rational, and I'm going to just attack that Asian grandma or something because I'm sick of these Asians in my neighborhood or something like that. So the social contract breaks down like that instantly.
Yeah. Yes,
because they've got no love for one another. Love is what prevents that from happening, right? So that's the problem with the Society of Rational Devils. Well, it only holds while they're 100% rational, and well, there are lots of people who aren't 100% rational any of the time. And there was a second thing, that the immigration thing is particularly interesting, right? Because the most cultures would instinctively say, well, no, we're not going to bring in millions of people from a foreign culture. That's mad, because that would attack our own culture, the integrity of our culture, right? Most normal cultures would think that. But the liberals, the interesting thing about pre-social man is what you do is you create a kind of universal man, a kind of universal blank slate, because they point out, rightly so, that a lot of the way that we are is formed by the society in which we live, like your accents.
This is a very important point. And this is very well said.
Universal blank slate, because they point out, rightly so, that a lot of the way that we are is formed by the society in which we live, like your accents, the things you believe, the habits you have, the food you like to eat, the clothes you wear, the things you watch, the way that you think we should
This would be the word habitus according to Pierre Bourdieu's definition.
interact with other people. All of these things are socially conditioned into us. And so if you took someone from one society, a baby from one society, raise them in another society, they would have the social conditioning of that other society. But the problem is no person is ever raised outside of a society. So there's never a time where there is a universal blank slate man who can be presented as, oh, here we go, we're all just the same, really.
Then what's the bigger problem is that a person who is already a product of a particular society consciously decides that I am now going to become a blank slate. That is when the most insanity happens. That is your Hindu atheist types, Bengali commie atheist types, okay, who are absolutely the product of a tolerant / conservative kind of a mixture of a society. Then they decide, okay, I'm in my second year of Jadavpur University. Now I'm going to become a blank slate, and it's going to be perfect. I'm going to rejig my entire worldview. I'm going to think I'm a blank slate. I'm going to pretend that I'm not Hindu. I'm going to pretend I'm not Indian. I'm going to pretend I'm not Bengali. Although now it's cool to be Bengali because BJP doesn't do well in West Bengal. But that can never happen. तुम्हारा सब कंडीशन वो तुम सेकंड ईयर तक जाने तक हो गया था भाई. अब तुम ब्लैंक स्लेट नहीं कर पाओगे. तुम आई मीन इट्स नॉट इवन लिटरली ग्रामेटिकली बायोलॉजिकली कुछ भी तरह से पॉसिबल नहीं है. व्हाट यू आर डूइंग इज जस्ट बीइंग अ क्यूरियस सीकर इन द हिंदू सोसाइटी इटसेल्फ. तुम हो गए हो फोल्ड में. तुम भाग नहीं सकते इसमें से. व्हिच इज व्हाई व्हेन आई टर्न फ्रॉम कॉमी टू अ हिंदुत्ववादी आफ्टर 2021 आई रियलाइज्ड I was raised in a commie atheist family. All the values I was taught are in accordance with Hindu civilization as I know it, or even different Hindu texts and stuff, okay? Different do's and don'ts. Unknowingly, my parents were also Hindus. Unknowingly, I was forever raised a Hindu, okay? So I'm just now giving credit to my Hindu civilization for my upbringing. That's all. I'm just making the connection. But ये कनेक्शन ही होगा. तुम बड़े होके उसके बाद तो ब्लैंक स्लेट नहीं बन पाओगे.
So these people have got their own value system, they've got their own norms, they've got their own habits, they've got their own, what I think, really backwards belief around, intergender behaviors and things like that. And we're just bringing them in because we've assumed underneath all of that, they're just like us. And it's like, well, hey, there's no getting underneath all of that. That is what they are authentically to the core, because that's all they know of reality. And they're not like us.
Real quick, so the first point you made, sorry.
Abhijit, I don't know what is the comment. What did she say about Bangladesh immigration? I have no idea. I don't follow day-to-day politics too much.
Have you guys seen the meme about conditional hypotheticals?
Yeah.
So there's a 4chan post from someone who said that they were a psychology major or something that effect that did experiments, and they said that low IQ people could not understand conditional hypotheticals.
Yeah.
They would ask a question: how would you have felt if you did not eat breakfast yesterday?
Tim, I did eat breakfast.
Exactly. And so now it's become a meme on X where when someone says something dumb, you respond with, how would you have felt if you didn't have breakfast yesterday?
This is M. Shastri. Remember our last day live stream when we were discussing what is considered bholapan, which should actually be just called low IQ stupidity of, let's say, certain sections of India, which has happened because of insane amounts of poverty, repeated famines, low nutrition food, unhealthy food, poison-filled water, etc. So this is that kind of a thing. And ये हाइपोथेटिकल किसी को समझ में नहीं आता है, इसलिए नुआंस कॉन्वर्सेशन पॉसिबल नहीं है. इसलिए नरेंद्र मोदी अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी को स्पीच देना पड़ता है कि भाई और बहनों, आज हम यहां, नहीं तो किसी के दिमाग में घुसता नहीं है. तो अनदर थिंग इज, someone just reminded me that ये Judeo-Christian values, ये तो हुआ है only because Jewish people are so rich and powerful. In the necessary way. Indians are also rich, but they are not powerful in USA in the narrative space. तो ये Judeo-Christian नाम घुसेड़ा गया है because of the power of the Jewish lobby. In a hypothetical scenario, let's say 50 years from now, if Hindu billionaires also start doing the right things, I guarantee you, 100 years from now, people will start saying, America was founded on Hindu Judeo-Christian values.
Yesterday, low IQ people say, but I did.
Yeah.
Or they'd say, but I didn't. And you're like, no. But okay, so hypothetically, and
अरे नंदीश भाई तुम क्या पढ़ रहे हो? छुप छुप के पढ़ रहे हो क्या अच्छे सोशियोलॉजी के बुक्स, या फिर तुम्हारा भी यही अंडरस्टैंडिंग था पहले से? क्योंकि you are using the correct lexicon as well. Yes, we all have cultural capital without fucking knowing it. और उसके बाद भोसड़ी के blank slate खेलेंगे.
and they can't comprehend. In that post, it's actually a bit more elaborate. The individual goes on to say that they went to prisons and they spoke with violent offenders who had murdered, raped, or and robbed and things like this, maimed. And they asked them, "How do you think the mother of the man you murdered felt when she found out you killed her son?" And they go, "Huh?"
I have a clip of this that we can
I don't
play
know.
if need be, because Ross Kemp went to South Africa and asked a bunch of rapists, admitted rapists, how do you feel about this? Do you not feel bad about this? And they kept saying, "Yeah, well, we might get the girl pregnant, so it might be a worry." And he went, "No. Are you not concerned about the victim?" They went,
I think I've seen this. Yeah.
They might scream or they might give us AIDS. And he was
No,
like,
but-
"No, she's not traumatized." Just blank expressions.
They don't have the ability to understand that other people experience life.
It's solipsism.
Right.
Empathy
But
requires a certain level of intelligence.
Yes.
But the funny thing is, like, it is regressive solipsism. It is not someone who has sat down and had a conversation on a philosophy and then come to the conclusion, nihilism and solipsism, therefore I'll do what I please.
Yeah.
It's people who can't even create, understand, or get anywhere near that idea.
Yeah, and that's not bholapan, that's stupidity. Now, DX has pointed out a brilliant point here, a brilliant thing here, that it's not on its face, it's not brilliant, but it has brilliant repercussions, fascinating repercussions, that Indian billionaires don't have nationalistic approach, they just want to make money anyhow. Ye kyun hai? This is my only criticism of Dr. Kaushik Gangopadhyay's book. That he's of the opinion that Indians or Hindu civilization is not a theory-based society. We are kind of whatever empirical evidence happens alongside us, we evolve according to that. My criticism is that itself is a theory that go along with your empirical evidence. And plus there will be some Hindu values, cultural capital as well inside you already. So the reason Indian billionaires don't have a nationalistic approach when they go to USA, they just want to make money, is because of their Vaishya values, which they would have done even in India. Even in India, they would not have, as we can see from our billionaires as well, or forever what has happened is that people usually have not had a nationalistic approach. People, whatever your varna or jati, you do that specific duty. Baki nationalism, fascism to Kshatriya handle kar lega, hai na? So, therefore, you see, Muslims, when they came to India, they brought their theory along with them, their Arabian theories here, their survival strategies of the Arabian deserts was applied here. They're applying their Arabian desert clothes here. Hindu Indians are not being random blank slate atheists in USA. They are taking their Indian values, which were built in India, which came on to them, which grew in them because of Indian upbringing, Indian Hindu upbringing, because of Indian climate. They are taking that same idea and carrying it over with them to USA, which means in the end, Muslims also brought their theory with them from Arabia to India. Indian Hindu billionaires have taken their theory, which is based on empirical evidence, but that theory is still a theory, and they have carried that theory even to USA. तुम अपने हिंदू अपब्रिंगिंग से बाहर नहीं जा पा रहे हो, जो कि अब तुमको जाना पड़ेगा.
The fundamental assumption that all people are equal is probably the worst thing that people all experience the world, not equal, that all people experience the world in the same way
100%
is absolute.
अरे नंदीश, तब तो तुम्हारा हमारे और मिस्टर सोशियोलॉजिस्ट के साथ बहुत बढ़िया डिस्कशन होगा, क्योंकि तुमने जो फील्ड चूज किया है वो पियर बोर्दियू, मैक्स वेबर के बाहर नहीं जाएगा, मेनली सो पियर बोर्दियू.
Wrong, and it's incredibly detrimental to any society that adopts that as the normal state of being.
And it's certainly the modern era, the liberal era, where anyone thinks that. In every sort of pre-modern society, they understand that no, you come from a tribe, another tribe is a separate people to you, and they will behave differently.
And that was the fundamental assumption that got the United States and England into the Iraq War.
Yeah,
Once we
100%.
go in,
They'll
they will want
freedom
to
and
be like
liberation
us.
and democracy, and it's like, are you mad?
And that assumption cost millions of lives.
Yeah,
and it changed the Middle East and caused terrible repercussions throughout the whole world. And
led to the rise of ISIS, led to unbelievable horrors.
And as much as people will say that, oh well, it was George Bush or whatever, it's like, no, it wasn't George Bush, and it wasn't actually the argument that they might have nuclear material and stuff like that. That was the exactly. That was the argument on the face. But the real reason that people accepted it was, well, Americans accepted it, was we'll go in and they'll be better off once we take Saddam out of power, because they want to be free like us. And that is wrong. And as long as our society keeps behaving as if that's true, which it does currently, there has been no change in the minds of the people that organized the Iraq War. In fact, a good portion of them are currently in the administration now. And as long as that intuition has not changed, the mistakes will keep repeating.
This is, in my opinion, most well manifested in the migrant crisis in Britain, where you've got 90% are young men in their 20s and early 30s who are essentially adventuring. They're obviously adventurers, and they're obviously breaking into Britain because they know they're going to get free money. Right? And it's like, okay, look, this isn't anything new. Young men have always gone on adventures. They've always joined groups of people who go off adventuring to get whatever plunder they can get.
On social media, they advertise our women on nights out in states of drunkenness as the spoils of war.
Yeah. I'm not even joking. It's all over TikTok, right? It's all over TikTok. And it's like, look...
अरे इनको तो पता नहीं है कि हम तो इसका टर्म भी जानते हैं भारतवर्ष में भाई. वो spoils of war, drunken British women on the streets of England at night are spoils of war. वही है माले गनीमत.
But the liberals are like, oh no, they're just coming here because they're victims of whatever, and they just want to be like us. It's like, no, they're coming here to exploit us, and they know that, and we know that, and yet for some reason this is still being allowed to happen.
And again, to this point, this is an argument that Sam Harris, regardless of your opinion of him, this is the argument that he makes about Islam, and he gets tons of hell for it.
But he's right.
But if you read Dabiq, which I've mentioned before, that was their magazine where they outlined, they had a whole article where they outlined exactly what they thought. And at the time, Barack Obama was making the argument, no, it's economic. They don't really believe that. They don't. And it's like, no, you're a fool. They absolutely believe that. They absolutely do want to.
Anand, Iraqi democracy is generally working, but it can't be democracy at the cost of every other thing, right? Iraq was generally working even before USA sent them to hell.
Kill people that disagree with them because their religion says, and it's been this way for the entirety of the Islamic history. That is the way that they think. And so there are definitely peaceful Muslims. There are liberalized Muslims that could come to Western countries and live perfectly normal lives with everybody, and they go to the park, and they'll have cookouts with their neighbors, and it'll be wonderful and everybody be happy. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a portion of the people that have that theology, that believe that they are better, that believe that it is the right thing to do to enslave people that disagree.
It's not a coincidence that terrorism follows Islam, right? It's not a coincidence. It comes from the belief system. But the thing is, I think this is a good point to go on to communism now, right? Because it's not a coincidence that communism dogs liberalism, right? It's not a coincidence that every liberal society has a communist fringe that is pushing for more and more and more. And it's because the communists fundamentally agree with the liberal mythology. At no point do the communists ever say, oh no, that's not how things were. They say, yes, the state of nature sounds like a great idea, so why do we have private property? Because the liberals know they expressly left the state of nature to protect private property. And the communists, rightly, and they are correct on this, identify private property as the source of inequality, which it is. And so the communists say, well, look, to get back to the state of nature, we have to get rid of the property. And the liberal actually has to kind of admit that they're correct on that.
There are a few contemporary conflicts which started to change my view on free speech and liberalism, classical liberalism. So we for a long time, and right alongside me, Carl, we were defending people who opposed free speech on social media when they were being banned.
Yep.
They would say awful things. They would call for Carl to be banned. They got Carl banned. And then when they got banned, we would all jump up and say, no, we are moral people who believe in free speech, so they must be unbanned. We effectively were handing them the stones, which they would cast in our direction. And so then I had a change of mind about it. I said, rights for those who believe in rights.
Yeah.
And so that is, if you believe no one should have free speech, then I say, I agree. And if
Censor that man. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then when the government comes to shut you down, I will say, congratulations on getting exactly what you asked for. Yeah. And then if anyone else of any ideology, someone can come and tell me they're a communist, but free speech must be maintained always, no matter what. And the communist states that have suppressed free speech were wrong. I'll say, defend that man's speech.
These ideas are like free speech and stuff like that. They're internally working. They only work in a closed system. You can't
tribal, not universal.
Yeah, you can't have I've mentioned this problem with liberalism before. You can't have an authoritarian philosophy come into a liberal philosophy and say, well, we're going to live under liberal principles until we have the ability to force you. And so liberalism, if liberalism, and this is not particular to the liberalism that we're talking about, but if our society as and whatever name you want to call it, is going to survive, it has to have the ability to exclude, and it has to have the ability to use force to defend its principles.
And that is called Viveka. Discriminate, prioritize, understand what's good for you, understand what's bad for you. Everything is not equally good. Everything is not even equal.
I want to elaborate on my point. I was thinking about free speech, and they say speech is the most important thing. I mean, if you can't express your ideas, how can you maintain your principles, your values, your culture, etc.? And I was thinking about how they release these criminals in various cities and states and countries. A criminal will go and mercilessly beat a person. We say, okay, we want to apply force against this person, which is to detain them, to lock them in a box.
Actually, Anand is bringing up an interesting point. Actually, I have seen some of these people these days admit this. I think on Timpul's podcast only, someone was saying that, Africa is violent even where there are Christians. So it's not a Christianity or Muslim issue, maybe. It's a culture issue where they see religion and culture as different, whereas we know it isn't, it can't be. So maybe they converted them in name only. The values of that area remained forever the same. Pre-Islam, pre-Christian versus post-Islam and post-Christian. So, which is why, again, Sargon of Akkad pointed out that it's a British interpretation of Christianity that we are talking about.
Liberals then say, no, that's unfair, release them. You have someone who is violating the social contract in beating you, but you will not uphold the contract against them.
Yeah.
And so I look at that as plainly obvious to the average person. Hey, physical violence is wrong. The question then becomes, why did we release that person from jail? And then I thought about it. What's the difference with free speech? Speech is an important thing. We need to be able to express our ideas without censorship. But if an individual is going around shutting people down so they cannot speak, for us to defend their free speech would be akin to releasing a violent criminal from jail because jail is wrong. No.
Yep.
If they are in violent, so
that's what they think too. They think jail's wrong as well.
I know.
Yeah, because remember the Rousseauian paradigm has the person as the victim of society.
Yeah.
And so the person this is why they're always on the side of criminals, right? Because if you're hardworking, you pay your taxes, you obey the law, you get on with your neighbors, then you are the beneficiary of an unjust system, because the system does produce criminals, right? A system that we didn't choose, that grew up around us, that you are privileged by. You are actually the oppressor of the criminal, because the criminal didn't choose to live in society, and he can't live by the rules. He can't live by the laws. And so in the society...
Yes, and therefore, you bringing in an extra gun law, you bringing an extra anti-rape law is not going to prevent the man from raping, because we already have enough anti-rape laws and anti-gun laws. So what Ash Ketchum is pointing out here, when push comes to shove, realism always trumps over idealism and first principles. Absolutely. Therefore, we have to ensure that push does not come to shove. And the problem is that commies probably think that even if push came to shove, we would be happy with each other and we would love each other, etc. Maybe Marx didn't say that, but commies, liberals of today who believe in 15-minute videos, they probably believe those things. It's just the society oppressing everyone.
He is clubbing him down and persecuting him. That's unjust as far as the very left-wing liberal is concerned.
When we have Neuralink and pods, these people can choose to be truly free.
Yeah, they can.
Well, actually, only about 95%. Someone's still got to charge the pod in the Neuralink system, but then they can go live in their fake GTA whatever reality.
But I tell you, I just on a moral level, I'm just so anti-liberal morality at this point. I think people should get what they deserve. You know, if you're some guy and you punch an Asian grandma on the street or something, oh no, there's a moral debt here, right? You owe a moral debt of pain to society. You should be flogged. You should be flogged. I know. You see the liberal sentiments. Well, I don't know about no.
No. I think that's too emotional, and I think you need a rigid, logical structure that commands and controls.
What's wrong with expressing the catharsis of watching the criminal get his just comeuppance?
It depends, right? And so I oppose the death penalty. However, I also agree that there are circumstances a person could engage in where they have forfeit their right to life. That is, if a criminal pulls a gun on an old Asian woman,
kills him.
If you are in a circumstance where you must defend the life of another person, the action taken by the criminal perpetrator that puts other people at risk, they have forfeited their right to continue living. And I don't want them to die. I want to avoid that in all circumstances. That being said, it's not that I'm saying they deserve it. I'm saying we must take the action necessary to save lives.
See, I'm off the utilitarian sort of perspective on this one. Like, it's not that you're wrong, obviously.
Ayush, I know you don't mean this. You mean this only sarcastically, but a lot of communist liberals think that UK, US deserves what it's getting, and some Occidentalists on the Hindutva side as well. They deserve what's happening to them because they kind of also their ancestors did the same thing. But the problem lies in that very sentence. They did not do these things. Their ancestors did. And historical injustices are a very problematic thing. You can't punish an innocent person today for their ancestors' wrongdoings. Otherwise, commies will also say that every Brahmin today is also to be blamed for whatever casteism happened for the 5,000 years, 10,000 years, okay? So never go down the historical injustice route.
Right, in a very rational way, that is correct. But I think there is a sentimental moral burden that is incurred by the criminal when they inflict unjustified horror on someone else.
And I agree. And the challenge I think that I come to with that is we need to make sure that the people that function within our society know we will do everything in our power to protect the innocent and those who abide by our values, lest they decide one day, my friend just got the crap beaten out of him because they were wrong.
Yeah.
And if that's what's going to happen to me, I better be sneaky.
But
we
you
want
then
people to
need
be
to make
honest.
the cost really high. I mean, the example I would always use in the UK is the Lee Rigby murderers. There was a Royal Army drummer who was stabbed, decapitated, brutalized in broad daylight.
In the middle of the street.
Yeah.
That was on video, wasn't it?
Yes.
I remember that.
His two killers are now in Belmarsh prison.
In the interest of made-up countries and not civilizations, which I think Abhay or Buddhadev Bhattacharya said, which was a great point. That actually, again, DX points out here unknowingly that UK sowed the very seed which is screwing it over today. Hopefully the current population wakes up to the threat before it's too late. First of all, even if they wake up, it's too late. But more so, the problem was not that they it depends on what part of their action or which action you think was the quote-unquote sowing of the seed. I think the sowing of the seed was the Westphalian Treaty itself, the nation state model itself, because इन लोगों ने ऐसा हमको देश चाहिए अलग से, तो वो जो tantrum के basis पे जो देश खड़ा हुआ, which cannot survive without creating European Union. तो अगर यूरोपियन यूनियन ही चाहिए तुमको, तो ये देश का क्या फायदा भाई? विलीन हो जाओ ग्रेजुअली एक यूनाइटेड यूरोप नाम का देश में. नहीं तो मतलब देखो, अब यूरोपियन यूनियन भी पैरेलल से चल रहा है और ये देश के लोग भी अलग से देश का कुछ अथॉरिटी हो वो भी मांग रहे हैं. दोनों में कोई मतलब समन्वय ही नहीं है. वही प्रॉब्लम है अलग से देश मांग लेने का रैंडमली. जो प्रॉब्लम आज बांग्लादेश का पाकिस्तान का है, they would be better off with us. Whether we are better off or not without them or with them, that's a different question. But this is a problem. Random country making.
and as Islamists are at liberty on the taxpayers' dime to sit in their cells and worship all day and cavort with their friends.
You know, you won't believe what a conversation I had with a commie friend of mine, who, by the way, I later saw is in that video, okay, that balatkari ho tum. Years later, I saw him in that video, or her. So, when I was not yet a Hindutvadi, but I was a nationalist, I believed in the army and strong state, etc. Law and order should be sarvopari. But not just for Hindus. Hindus and Muslims are absolutely equally innocent in those things. So I was still opposed to the idea of Kashmir letting go off, which is a kind of a normal view for most people who are not educated in the commie academia, which is why so many people are shifting to the Hindutva side, because they realize that, okay, the things we kind of inherently believed in or knew, that is the Hindutva position. So I asked him that, okay, see, it's such a, if at all we let it be a small country on its own, it's going to be such a small country with Pakistan on one side, China on one side, India on one side. The day we let it go, Pakistan is going to take over. No. What do we do then? What's even the point of letting it become a country of its own? You won't believe his answer. By that time, he was already a graduate of Presidency College. He had completed his master's in Jadavpur University. Such an educated person said, Indian government will take care of its protection from Pakistan. But after it's gone away from India.
I don't agree with that at all.
Yes,
Exactly. Right?
So hang them, because there is no doubt that they did it. And what naive optimism are we laboring under, where we think that locking them in a box for a little while?
Ra, ऐसा नहीं है. Ra कहाँ गया? हाँ. So he's saying that in an actual Akhand Bharat, Hindus would be second-class citizens. ऐसा नहीं है, क्योंकि it's never. Then you are actually buying into the majoritarian myth. Okay. कि अच्छा उनका पॉपुलेशन ज्यादा हो जाता, इसलिए हम गड्ढे में चले जाते. British people were never the majority in the country. Today, even Muslims are not the majority in the country. Even then, we are the 8th-class citizens. And let's say, I'm saying this to commies, obviously. Brahmins are 4.5%. Upper castes are still not the majority. Dalits are the majority. तो ऑपरेशन मेजॉरिटी माइनॉरिटी के बेसिस पे नहीं होता है. मेजॉरिटी का फंडामेंटल्स क्या है उसके बेसिस पे होता है. एंड इवन इफ टुडे अखंड भारत वाज अ रियलिटी एंड मुस्लिम्स वर द मेजॉरिटी, इवन देन इफ that hypothetical minority Hindu population just took care of law and order, and nothing else, even then all of this would be possible. तो ब्रिटिश ने आके 1.5 लाख लोगों से पूरा देश में राज कर लिया है ना. कैसे? सिर्फ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर के वजह से.
And giving them room to reflect might recondition them and allow them to assimilate back into civilization.
And I agree with this because, you know, a lot of people ask me why I oppose the death penalty. And it's because we do not have such a system here in the United States where we only give the death penalty when there is a clear video of a man doing it who then screams, I did it and will do it again. We have instances where corrupt prosecutors like Kamala Harris tell me, trust me, this person's bad. And it has resulted in an amount of innocent death. I
am actually with you on this one because we debated this last time, didn't we? Because you are right. But I think Connor is also right as well. Like we can have an infallible standard at this point. We've got, you know, video evidence, we've got DNA evidence.
Right.
We've got, you know,
well, they're proud that they did it.
Exactly.
Allahu Akbar.
Exactly.
In the witness
Right.
document.
They're unbelievably proud that they did it. So in cases where we can rule out that it couldn't possibly have been anyone else, and we can establish those cases, I'm 100% in favor of it.
But I also got to add the problem of your country in this circumstance. What do you think would have happened to this man if he did this in West Virginia?
Well, he would have been shot
Several times.
which is great.
So
Americans do believe in the death penalty.
And I want to clarify what it means when you say this is great and you're smiling.
Yeah.
You know, I feel that emotion. I feel that we have stopped an evil man who was trying to harm an innocent man, and we are glad it happened.
Yeah.
I'm sad the person dies. I'm sad these conflicts exist. No, you shaking your head, but
no, I'm not shaking my head.
I can't manifest sympathy.
Yeah, in a broad
it's not
sense,
it's not sympathy for the evil person.
Yeah.
It's lamenting that
the world is like this.
Yeah, we don't want people to die. I want the maximum potential of all man. I want to reach the stars. I want to go to Mars. I want to interplanetary, interstellar, subspace communications. And when a crazy ideologue pulls out a machete and then says, screams a fanatical Allahu Akbar and then grabs a guy by the hair and
Tries to cut
this
off
is
his head, yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
It's all we do not want these circumstances.
But unfortunately, those circumstances can and will happen.
Yes,
And
and
so we should do the right thing in the right circumstances for the right reasons for the right results, and that is Phil drawing his gun and blowing the guy away.
The reason,
That's
the
what
reason
that's what it is.
But here's
100%, and we can feel good about that. We can get catharsis out of that.
but yeah, I agree. My concern, however, is I want to make sure that we present ourselves to future generations as firm, logical, rational. And when a child looks at a man who just had to end the life of another man who is evil, he does not say, ha, 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 what a great thing, my child. He says, we must endeavor to make these not possible, which means a secure state, a secure border, and these criminals not being able to engage in these actions in the first place. We should not celebrate that we had to end the life of a crazy person.
Sure, but there's also a kind of issue with I don't think morality is rational. Right? I think morality is sentimental. And I think to be a genuinely good person, you have to tap into a well of feeling that you feel towards someone else.
I actually
and this
Guys, this might not be right, I think. I'm divided on this. Because remember, whatever they say is going to be rooted, and it's pretty much declared that it's rooted in the British interpretation of Christianity. It's rooted in those values, okay. Now, what René Girard had pointed out, which I really like, is that there is always a scapegoat mechanism in every society, right? People find a person or anything to sacrifice to let's say solve a problem. We have our Bali Pratha for a literal goat. Every society has some sort of a scapegoat. Like Hitler, knowingly or unknowingly, considered Jews the scapegoat, that you just kill this group or this person and then society will be filled with peace and prosperity. तो ऐसे हर society में एक scapegoat mechanism रहता ही है हमेशा, which causes that society to remain in peace and harmony. So let's say probably with our Bali Pratha as well, we have a scapegoat, and then right after that goat is killed, everyone thinks that, okay, now we have the blessings of Ma Kali to the full extent, and now we can chill at home happily, and let's not worry about any other conservation of our cause and culture, etc. Tab to Hinduism teaches non-violence, etc. But René Girard pointed out that Jesus Christ was also a scapegoat. Christianity is the first religion which started from the point of view of the scapegoat. And therefore, inherently, this is not something that René Girard points out. This kind of, I'm building upon it. Or maybe he has said this. I have not read to those sections as of yet. Therefore, I think Christianity, Abrahamic principles have this weakness or extra love and sympathy for the victim, for the criminal, maybe. Because they see the criminal as also the victim of the state and nation, society, everything. But the problem is that, the reality is that Christianity was born from the perspective of the glorifying of the scapegoat itself. All other pre-Christian religions were from the perspective of the society, of the, let's say, the gusse wala senior uncle or the grandfather in the family. That sort of a perspective. Christianity is born out of the perspective of the victim. कि देखो भाई कितना अत्याचार हुआ हमारे साथ. Therefore, morality may or may not be always based on sentiments. I'm not of the opinion that हाँ एकदम rule follow करके हमेशा कर रहे थे, but sentiments के ऊपर basis रहना morals का, ये शायद थोड़ा वो Christian interpretation हो गया है. And more importantly, when Christianity therefore speaks from the side of the scapegoat, and wait, I'll get to this point a little more elaborately. Let's see how he completes this point.
This is this is what heroism is, right? Because whenever you see these videos where you've got some lunatic with a gun going and killing people, and then some guy puts his own neck out and just bam gets him, that is heroism. That's a heroic act. He's putting himself in danger. And this isn't rational. This is because it's rational. Just leave. It's not my problem. I'm going to go, right? But no, I'm going to put myself in the line of danger because it's morally the right thing to do. It comes from the heart.
Look at I
agree with you. There should be a level of due solemnity to this.
I think it is only because, and it's I don't even know if I have the grounds to say this, but neither of us have ever had to shoot somebody.
Right.
The only thing I've ever heard from people who have is trauma and regret and wonder, did I have to? Should I have? The stories from Vietnam where we draft these young men, drop them on the shores, and they aim above the average height of a person. They shoot into the trees because they don't want to do it.
This has not been my experience. There's a lot of people that I know that, especially guys that tend to get into the special forces stuff, they are as murdery as they come.
Chris Kyle's biography is exactly that.
And
That's scary.
There's another guy. There's a guy that BJ Baldwin, right? He's a race car driver, does BJJ. Couple years back, he was in a parking lot in Las Vegas, and a guy pulled out a gun and was attacking his girl. And he does a lot of competitions. He cleared the garment, smoked the guy like under a second, like super fast. And he did what he had to do to save his girlfriend or his wife. When you do things like that for the right reasons, if you're defending your family, it is actually more common for people to not feel that kind of bad. Exactly. And that is a good thing. And it's something as a society we should hold in high regard because you did the hard, right thing.
But I agree. And my point is, I don't want the next generation to think we get satisfaction and joy out of causing harm.
So guys, what I'm saying is that this letting go of the prisoners today that's going on in California, which is based on some sort of Marxism, all that is happening as the inevitability of, I think, the Christian idea of creating an ideology from the perspective of the scapegoat, where sympathy for anyone who is seemingly in a bad condition, sympathy for them at all costs. That is the absolute rock solid theory they profess. Now notice here, that is sort of an overcompensation. Their laws, rules, and domination, expansion, imperialism of these religions is rigid. Okay, वहां पे कोई sacrifice नहीं, कोई accommodation नहीं, वहां पे rigid भी रहेंगे, जिसके वजह से victimhood होगा. फिर victimhood के लिए नारेबाजी भी उनके आइडियोलॉजी से ही निकलेगा. ये एक अजीब सिचुएशन है. Not only is their ideology based from the perspective of the scapegoat, but because they are from the scapegoat ideology, they first do insane amounts of domination and atrocities because they have sort of a unearned moral superiority that हम तो भाई victim के पार्टी से आए हैं, तो हमको तो बनता ही है हम सबको यहाँ पे आसपास में मार डाले, ऑप्रेस करे. मगर उसके साइड इफेक्ट से अब कुछ और नए विक्टिम्स बन गए हैं, तब उनके लिए फिर से गले फाड़ना शुरू करो. इसका पोलर ऑपोजिट हम कह सकते हैं कि हिंदू सिविलाइजेशन में है कि हम वैसे सोशल स्टेट स्ट्रक्चर में हार्ड एंड फास्ट रिजिड नहीं है. देयरफॉर हम विक्टिमहुड को इतना सीरियसली, उतना क्या कुछ भी सीरियसली नहीं लेते हैं. बट एट द सेम टाइम देयरफॉर जितना जो रूल है वहां पे अगर कोई मतलब इफ समवन फॉल्स थ्रू द गैप्स ऑफ सोसाइटी, उसके लिए कोई सिंपैथी नहीं. तब तुम भाड़ में जाओ, तुम गाड़ मराओ भोसड़ी के. ऐसा ही है अर्थशास्त्र.
Harm.
Well, yeah,
the harm should be a negative. And my, I'm thinking of the stories of the superheroes that I grew up with and their naivety. The Superman would never kill, Batman would never kill, and they
did.
And but because the writers were smart, and so Injustice 2, I think, is the video game that came out 10 years ago or whatever. Story. In the early days, the golden era of superheroes, they didn't kill. They would capture and arrest.
Joker died in his first appearance, actually.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, they saved him on the final page. They had him in the back of an ambulance, having been stabbed, tripped and fallen over on his own knife. And then one of the writers went, "Oh my God, he's going to live," because they realized he'd be so popular.
Right. But that tripped and fell over his own knife is very different from, the moral
being
code.
Killed.
Yeah, Batman,
Homeland.
Batman drowned a guy in an acid vat in Detective.
What year?
Yeah, Rupa Shaw, their argument is that अगर तुम मतलब वो कार्ल पॉपर का जो आर्ग्यूमेंट है कि मतलब सोसाइटीज एंड यू नीड टू डू देयर प्रोटेक्शन, वो बुक का नेम क्या है मैं अभी भूल गया. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So if there is a stable society, you need to protect it by being intolerant towards the people who are intolerant. तो अब कॉमी का मानना है कि भाई ये जो गरीब फार्मर है जो कि एक काऊ के जगह 2 काऊ रख ले रहा है एंड हमारा इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर उसके वजह से गड्ढे में जाने वाला है, तो वो तो इंटॉलरेंट बन रहा है. हमारी ये ब्यूटीफुल प्रो विक्टिम आइडियोलॉजी के तरफ, तो उसको मारो. तो नहीं तो हमारा ये ब्यूटीफुल सोसाइटी कैसे एग्जिस्ट करेगा. तो M Shastri is saying, can we increase the speed? Should I increase the speed, guys? Do you all have a problem? Let me know.
It's 27, 1939.
So early.
Yes.
Well, then there was this period where it was very much like they don't kill, but
it's very much the sort of like 60s era, right? The liberal era.
It was right. The Comics Code, actually.
And then,
that's why.
That's interesting. But you end up with some writers who are like, there's serious short-sightedness to how they're writing this, and you end up with a story where Joker, there's a couple different ways. He detonates a nuke in Metropolis, massacring millions, and then Superman loses his mind, telling Batman, if you just did one time what had to be done, millions of people would live.
Yeah.
And I think that's the Injustice arc where they become the Justice Lords.
That's a great point, though, because this is the point that we're making about, like, Phil making about the guy shooting the guy who's going to threaten his wife. We're not celebrating having done harm, because we're not trying to do harm. What we're doing is preventing
Exactly.
But I agree. So the reason I bring up the superhero stuff is I want kids to look up to heroes who say it's a terrible choice that had to be made, not a ha ha ha. You know what I mean? Like,
sure, but I agree there should be sort of due solemnity, but I don't think there's any. I don't think it helps, like, quibbling over, well, what about the harm to the criminal? Well, sorry,
no.
I
agree.
It's about what's just. Who is the just man in this situation?
And this seems like they are now finally getting to the अर्थशास्त्र sort of a position. लिव एंड लेट लिव भी है थोड़ा बहुत. अभी इंग्लैंड में ये जाके हर कोई हिंदू फैमिली को नहीं बोलेंगे कि नहीं आज से तुमको क्रिश्चियनिटी में कन्वर्ट करना पड़ेगा, ये भी नहीं बोलेंगे, मगर बोल रहे हैं कि देखो जो अब क्राइम कर रहा है उसके लिए हम सिंपैथी नहीं रख सकते. व्हिच इज व्हाई आई हैव रिपीटेडली स्टम्बल्ड अपॉन दिस कंक्लूजन दैट Christianity just seems a few millennia behind Hindu civilization. They're coming to the same problem, same solutions, same conclusions and stuff.
I was talking about Cincinnatus the other day, and he was a consul in, it was Rome, I believe, right? Yeah, and
Republic,
he was called upon during an invasion to take dictatorial powers, and I think it was like 16 days. They quelled the invasion, and he says, I'll see you guys later. And they were like, you have absolute power. Everyone will do it. He's like, I'm going to go back to my farm.
Yeah.
Several years later, another emergency, they called him back. They said, there's an uprising. He's like, I'll take care of it, but then I'm leaving. And we look at that, and that is that is something I think that is a story to look up to. Reluctant leadership, strong heroes who do the right thing, minimize harm, but do what needs to be done. And we all understand the seriousness. Yeah. And that's just it, I guess. Like, I'm not sympathizing with the criminal.
No, I know you're not. And I agree with you.
I want our children to grow up to be like that great dictator emperor who gave up his power. They are strong men. They are rational men. My concern is if children are taught to derive pleasure from these circumstances, you end up with these leftist lunatics and violent. Like, we want strong reason.
The issue is that there's a huge moral component that underpins the heroism of the good guy in our mythology, right? In our superhero mythology, in our just actual mythology. There's a very, very strong moral component. It's not frivolous, right? Like, look at Lord of the Rings, right? There's a lot of violence in Lord of the Rings, but it's all justified and it's all good. It's all good violence to stop the orcs from pillaging the Shire or whatever it is, pillaging Rohan or whatever. It's underpinned by a very firm moral foundation of right and wrong and for the right reasons. So I'm not worried about it, but I do appreciate that that there is a danger of falling into kind of sadism or something like that. I completely agree. We want to avoid that.
Well, I would say is, I know that when you're celebrating the bad guy being stopped, who was trying to behead, who literally beheaded a soldier, your celebration is not in the death; it's in the preservation of life.
It's in the preservation of justice.
And my concern is a child who may not understand the nuances of this, thinking the celebration is in the destruction, as opposed to the limiting factor of
maybe. But I'm pretty sure that we're emphasizing the justice that is being preserved by the stopping of the evildoer. I'm pretty sure that's well emphasized.
As long as the children understand,
I think so.
That when our soldiers come home and we're celebrating and cheering mission accomplished, it's not because of the death that was wrought in the war. It's because of what we halted, what was stopped, and what needed to be done for the preservation of our society and our life.
Context does matter, because if you're, like, to Tim's point, the idea of people coming home from war and having done what they were told they had to do in a combat situation is one thing, and then something more of what I described, where you're on the street defending the lives of your family or whatever. Those are very different contexts, and that they should be approached differently, and the differences in the context need to be addressed. Because if you are defending your family or your children, or even if you're just defending innocent people, part of the reason that we have we have the issues in New York City is because Daniel Penny got picked up by the police for trying to defend. So it is sad that the person died. That wasn't their intent, but the effort wasn't to kill the man. The effort was to stop the attack. And that's one of the things that, I mean, I go to a lot of gun classes. I've gone to more than, at least 15 different times. I've gone to handgun classes and stuff like that. And one of the things that you're taught is you're not killing anyone. The point is not killing. The point is not to do anything other than to stop the threat. And one of the things you have to learn is in an interaction like that, the legal use of force is like a light switch. There are times where you can be in a situation where you have to draw your gun and you take shots, and then the person can fall on the ground, right? Because they lose blood, but because of the way the body works, when they fall on the ground, and their blood pressure had dropped, and so they drop. But then when they're on the ground and they're laying down, blood goes back to their brain. They could still have the gun, and when they're on the ground, you can't shoot them anymore. But once the blood goes back into their brain and they get a little bit of sense back, if they start getting up with the gun again, flip that switch. It's time to go to work again and stop that threat. And that's the way that you have to break it down.
This brings me, I'm thinking about an interesting consequence of the globalization of civilization and technology. The idea is we're not trying to kill, we're trying to stop the threat and protect our society. We want justice.
ये भोसरी के ये है चुतिया, ये है अहिंसा. ये अहिंसा का डेफिनेशन आज इनको पता चल रहा है. ये अहिंसा का डेफिनेशन हमारा था 4000 साल पहले. हमको गांडू का अहिंसा सिखा दिया.
We want stability. We want our values upheld. If someone is going to, I suppose the idea would be, if you had the ability to use the force, and there was a guy who had to commit a murder, and you could just halt him, that would be required by our society as opposed to using a gun.
Yes.
The reason the gun is allowed is because it is the means by which you stop the threat.
पहले वायलेंस किया, ऐसे ही चलो मजे हैं, हम तो विक्टिमहुड के पार्टी से आए हैं, मारो भोसरी वालों को. फिर लगा के नहीं हम तो विक्टिमहुड को अब थोड़ा बढ़ावा देंगे. अब पता चला नहीं भाई, हिंसा ज्यादा हो रहा है, अब अहिंसा करते हैं. और उसके पहले फंड कर दिया यहाँ के चुतियों को जिन्होंने हमको सिखाया हिंदुइज्म teaches non-violence.
Not kill the person. As technology is advancing, we are now running into a very serious conundrum of the gray area of weaponry.
Bella Daniel, yes, there is no single theology, but there is a single definition of ahimsa. And nowhere is the definition of ahimsa that you have to sit quietly while you get fucked.
But also, you go back in time, exile was an option. Running someone out of town was an option. People would be satisfied to a certain degree if they had a small village. There was
कृष्णा का अहिंसा तो हाँ, ये तो कृष्णा को ब्लेम करने का भी क्या, वो वॉर स्ट्रेटेजिस्ट है. उसको नॉन वायलेंस करना हो तो वो घर पे बैठा रहता. वो अर्जुन के साथ क्या कर रहा था वहां पे?
a person who lived there who was a criminal, and they chased him away, and he ran off into the woods. And
yes, Anand is pointing out again that yes, अब ये भी लगेगा कि ये तो this idea came to India from the USA. वहां से ये आइडिया आया था. बिरयानी वगैरह, आर्किटेक्चर, गार्डनिंग, उसके साथ ये अहिंसा का आइडिया भी अब टीम पूल के पॉडकास्ट से यहाँ पे आया था.
was never seen again. They'd say, "Yay, we're safe." It doesn't exist anymore. In the United States, there's no running anywhere. You're not going to Canada or Mexico. They're not going to let you in. You can try, but then you're a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question becomes, while we don't want people to die, we want to preserve justice. Then there's a difference in, and this is interesting. If you do not need to kill the person who is about to commit a murder or a series of murder, whatever it may be, and you capture them, but you know they are a threat, and they say to you and to everyone, "I'll do it again. You let me out, I swear." Then we must pay forever as a society. What is the answer to this question? Certainly, it is not so easy to say that we're just going to keep paying resources and doing labor to preserve some standard of living for someone who is trying to kill and murder and maim.
It doesn't seem just, does it?
And then the problem is, what is the alternative? There's no exile anymore. That's why I've proposed, half jokingly, the island, where we get a big island, like a big one, maybe like 20, 30 square miles somewhere,
Yes.
and not big enough, and too close. I'm saying in the middle of nowhere, and we say, here's what we're gonna do. We're not paying for you, but you're also not welcome in our society anymore. So we're gonna.
So basically, redo another Australia. What?
Here's your new little society.
That's right.
Yeah.
Arkham City. It's where all of you want to live that way with them, and you guys have your own social order. And then
Australia.
I feel like that's a solution. It minimizes how much we have to spend on preserving the lives of evil people without killing them, and it solves the moral question. And then, hey, we're not killing them. We're breaking their chains.
The liberal anthropology won't allow that.
भाई, reinvent wheel करना जितना करना है कर लो भाई. What is left of the right, as they have only left with only Bible and guns, as the left has long back won the culture wars, wars world over, as people still live in delusion. So what's your point exactly?
And the reason is, it's that they believe that by contact with this paradoxically value-neutral but pro-liberal assertion of values, they will have all their civilizational priors deconditioned. It's like the Freirean idea of education. The child who hasn't been appropriately inculcated into the society yet repeals the priors of the teacher, and then the teacher replaces their priors with proactive liberal/Marxist values. And this is what's happening in the UK with these Palestine protests and the mass immigration. The idea is that we will allow these protests to continue on because eventually, just by making physical and cultural contact with secular liberal capitalism, all of these tribal issues will dissolve into a neutral liberal milieu.
Liberals are special people. Huh?
Well, yeah, liberalism
Very optimistic. Very optimistic.
Thinks of itself. You know the phrase melting pot that is applied to America often.
Yep.
They think of a melting pot as a crucible, right? You put all these metals in, and all the impurities will be burnt off, and you'll create a billet that you can fashion a fantastic dagger out of. Actually, it's a blender. You put all of these incompatible ingredients in, and liberalism is the parameters, the cup that all these ingredients are in. You hit blend, and they think there would be some sort of nutritious smoothie in it. Instead, it'll be this lumpy thing, and the most dominant illiberal ingredient will be the strongest possible aftertaste.
I disagree. I think it is the crucible argument is correct. The problem is liberalism is what will be removed as an impurity. So the denser material of culture is not liberalism. So if you were to, let's call it a centrifuge, right? If you were to take all of these various cultural metals and put them in the crucible, boil it up, liberalism rises to the top and is pushed out, and the denser material is not going to be liberalism. And a good example of this is even Noam Chomsky. When he was asked, there's that famous email where he was asked about violence, and he said, we must not engage in violence, because if we enter this arena, he said something, in the arena of violence, we are not the strong, and we will lose. And that's what he was trying to tell these, hippie progressive leftists, but not like it matters.
This is actually what even Ankit Shah said. Ankit Shah said this to the Hindutwadis who are planning street power and stuff. के भाई numbers में तो तुम street power से कुछ उखाड़ नहीं पाओगे.
I believe he's correct. The leftist liberal.
Anand Sridhar, what common culture does the US have? Your answer is the name of a book by Max Weber.
That is engaging in the acts of violence. And this is a meme most people talk about. Throwing firebombs, using guns. They suck at everything they do. And unfortunately, our society here in the United States and to large degrees in Europe, they're tolerating this leftist unrest. However, most people agree that rural conservative Second Amendment cheering folks are going to be substantially better at armed combat and conflict, but they try their best to refrain from that becoming the norm for obvious reasons. You take liberalism and American conservatism and you throw them in the crucible, and the ejection will be liberalism, not conservatism.
I mean, really, when you think about it, they're so bloody lucky that the average rural American is such a decent fellow. They're so lucky because, I mean, in many places in the world, these kind of people aren't decent fellows.
But my point to what you're saying is, if you take fundamentalist Islam and British liberalism and put them in a crucible, liberalism is what's going to be pushed out. Islam will become the mass.
They think though that the technological
the other way around.
progress that comes out of liberalism because of its narrative of it being the apotheosis of philosophy as of the Enlightenment and off the coattails of the scientific revolution will be a seductive enough power to persuade the Islamists. And they're not wrong in some places, because have you seen the city, The Line? This massive wall city that looks like a destiny map.
The plan. Well, it's collapsed. Like,
yes,
they can't do it.
Where are they trying to do this? It's in Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
So there is a degree of parasitism happening just because the attraction of wealth and the abolition of privation and of suffering that comes with the adoption of liberal technology. It's a strong argument, and you really need to be like an Amish or a Mennonite or a proper Islamic fundamentalist to not buy into the technology. And that's what C.S. Lewis was writing about. He was essentially saying that the paradigm of technology is trying to stave off nature's rule over man in this sort of Francis Bacon idea. Those that buy into that over the generations will eventually be men ruled by other men who applied technology to them. They don't know how to build and maintain themselves. And then when something in that technology breaks, nature will reassert itself. The only people that will be able to survive that will be living on the outside of that technological paradigm. And those are, coming back to demographics, those are the only ones with positive birth rates.
I agree. I think that's true. I mean, right now with OnlyFans, for instance, we have a declining birth rate. This is apocalyptic for any society.
I'm very glad at the people who are pointing out that this is very much like the Bhagavad Gita, because I have not read the Gita, but whatever I keep hearing, excerpts, discussion on it, that seems like it has all the answers to these things. But अभी तो आधे लोगों ने पढ़ा नहीं है, जिन्होंने पढ़ा है उनको क्या समझ में आया है पता नहीं है. Hinduism teaches non-violence, etc.
The fascinating thing now is that OnlyFans is turning into guys talking to guys, but pretending to be girls, and other guys are buying into this. Yeah. The masturbatory machine, I mean that literally and figuratively, of the dopamine release economy that we have in the United States is creating a group of people that are going to destroy themselves. Yeah. Outside of this, it is going to be, the way I've described it is the conservative birth rate is higher than the liberal birth rate. The very simple reality. If your ideology leans more towards a traditional worldview, your culture, society, your faith, your religion, and your duty, you're more likely to survive. And it's obvious.
ये देखो एम शास्त्री क्या है कि This is what happens when you are trying to reinvent the wheel. You are trying to recreate a society from scratch instead of learning from people who are already successful at it. यही तो है बेसिक ऑफ कॉमी चुतियापा कि तुम सबको सिर्फ ब्लेम करोगे, डिमोनाइज करोगे, उसको मार भगाओगे, you will end that thing, end any successful thing, then try to do it on your own again, reinvent the wheel in a flawed way. Like it comes regularly to the caste issue as well. ऐसा क्या मिस्टीरियस थिंग चल रहा है ब्राह्मण फैमिलियों में, बंगाल से लेके तमिलनाडु तक, के Brahmins keep on being better at academics. Niner used to disagree with me. Now that he knows the reality of Bengal, he knows that this is very much true. कुछ अलग चल रहा है ना ब्राह्मण फैमिलियों में कि एकेडमिक रिगर कहां से है, क्यों है वो अलग प्रश्न है, क्यों है वो तो हम सबको पता है. कॉमीज बोलेंगे इकोनॉमिक प्रॉस्पेरिटी, ऑपरेशन का बेनिफिशियरी. मैं बोलूंगा कि वो मतलब पढ़ाई करना ही उनका हमेशा से काम था, इसलिए. तो अब बंगाली ब्राह्मण कॉमी बन रहा है, तमिल ब्राह्मण या तो कॉमी बन रहा है, या फिर जैसा दीपक आनंद रंगनाथन बन रहा है, या फिर विवेक रामास्वामी बन रहा है, मगर रिगर है यहाँ पे. तो हम उनसे सीख के उनका वैल्यूज हम अपने फैमिलीज में बिना शुरू किए हम सिर्फ ये बोलते फिरे कि अब ब्राह्मण को मार भगाओ, उससे क्या फायदा होगा? हम रीइन्वेंट द व्हील करेंगे, किसी ना किसी दिन हर फैमिली में विवेक रामास्वामी पैदा होगा, उसके लिए 1000 साल लग जाएंगे. तो अभी सीख के बेंचो, अभी शुरू करो ना घर पे. तो जो कि अननोइंगली बहुत लोग कर भी रहे हैं. तो ये है रीइन्वेंट द व्हील, जिसके लिए आज हम टिम पूल इन लोगों को लेट्स से दोष नहीं दे सकते. they are trying with the best resources, best intellectual resources that they have today around them, but this is a problem when you have detached the society completely. इन लोगों को ये सब जो रीइन्वेंट करना पड़ रहा है, मुझे जो ये सब आज सीखना पड़ रहा है, ये मेरा बेसिक अपब्रिंगिंग होना चाहिए था. ये सब मेरा एक कॉमी फेज में जाके ये करने का जरूरत नहीं था. और यहीं पे गुरु का बहुत एक कोई भी संप्रदाय में एक प्रॉपर गुरु का इसलिए एक इंपॉर्टेंस है. सबको को ये जो ब्लैंक स्लेट का चुतियापा है, सबको लगता है कि हाँ ऐसे ही एक मनुष्य पैदा होगा, थोड़ा सांस ले लेगा, कुछ नौकरी धंधा कर लेगा, हो जाएगा उसका जिंदगी. सब कुछ के लिए तुम्हें कोच चाहिए, गिटार सीखने से शुरू करके नौकरी के लिए, पढ़ाई करने के लिए, सबके लिए तुमको टीचर चाहिए, ट्यूशन चाहिए. जिंदगी नाम के चीज के लिए तुमको कोई ट्यूशन नहीं चाहिए. वहां पे तुम भोसड़ी के एकदम सेल्फ टॉट बनोगे. ये कैसा आर्ग्यूमेंट है? तो ये सब जो अब ये 42 के उम्र में आके टीम पूल सोच के निकाल रहा है, ये अगर तो मतलब थोड़ा पुराने कुछ बुक्स पढ़ लेते.
That is true on its own terms, but the problem is the Liberals control the education system. So it doesn't matter how many children Conservatives have, they're just going to be fodder for the Liberal grinder, where they're going to just go through, okay, now you're a communist when you come out of the education system.
50-50. It is true, but what we're seeing now culturally is conservatives have started to resist this.
Yeah,
and even classical liberals who, as you would view, are part of that chain, that component into the communist pipeline. But many of these now, I call them disaffected liberals. Liberals who still think they're liberal, but have realized the party and the social structure has gone chaotic and destructive. We're now looking at pod learning, private education, and things like this, and healthcare too. A lot of people are dissociating themselves from the system they created.
A lot of the classical liberal wing of the woke coalition, and this would be very unpopular to say though, are also not having the same propagative lifestyles as the non-tech conservatives are. They're using surrogacy. Their own kids are gay.
Or they're just using birth control.
Exactly,
Right.
and so they're still baked into the liberal reproductive priors as their forebears. So I think that will die out too.
I hear this argument a lot in the people in the US say, "Oh, the education system is bad." I still believe, even with the education system controlled by the left, if you were to, I'd make that bet. Run the simulations, whatever you got to do. Take conservative kid and a liberal kid. Run the simulation 50 billion times. The only difference with liberals controlling the education system is that it will take longer for them to collapse. With the cultural shift, quite literally the culture war, with conservatives creating, fighting the education system, challenging these degenerate books in schools, I think we're rapidly on track. And I can give you an actual example that I've cited several times on my show. And I covered this in about 2018. Birth rates in the 2000s among liberals was, I think, like 1.43, and conservatives was 2.03 or 2.05 or something like that. And the prediction was, give it 18 years, and you are going to see this represented in politics. And we literally did. Pew Research in 2018 found that for the first time in 100 years, Gen Z, for the first time in 100 years, a generation moved slightly more conservative in some areas, not all, in some. And while Gen Z looks very, very much politically like millennials,
हाँ, तो Anand Sridhar, great point. I was not making a genes point. जीन्स के वजह से मतलब जैसा दीपक आनंद रंगनाथन विवेक रामास्वामी पैदा नहीं हो रहा है, वो घर के कल्चर की वजह से ही पैदा हो रहा है. अब ब्राह्मण होने का कुछ कल्चरल नॉन नेगोशिएबल्स थे जो कि फॉलो हुए हैं या फिर रिप्लेस हो गए हैं विद अदर एजुकेशंस, तो उसलिए हो रहा है आई थिंक, नॉट जीन्स. अब क्षत्रिय होने का जो नॉन नेगोशिएबल्स था वो क्षत्रियों ने छोड़ दिया है. अब फिर से कलरीपयत्तु बोलना शुरू करेंगे लोग.
They lean slightly more to the right and conservative values. Now, a lot of people immediately assumed it's because conservatives were winning the argument, and that's not the case. It's because conservatives had more children. That's it. Now, polls are coming out showing that Gen Z is shifting towards the Republican Party. Once again, people are
Black people are also shifting towards the Republican Party because of the Thomas Sowell videos now going viral after Corona, which is why they need to import illegal immigrants, which is why they can't have voter ID laws. You don't require a voter ID card to vote in USA, guys. ऐसा है.
are acting like it's because we've convinced Gen Z to be conservative. And I'm like, no, it's because conservatives had more children and those kids had a tendency towards conservative values.
But also the left has really reached the sort of end point of their liberal ideals where they're like, okay, so we're going to chop off your dick and you're going to take loads of drugs and
you can't have a house.
You'll live in a pod, you'll own nothing. And it's, I'm not surprised some Gen Z kids like, I don't think I'm that, guys. I think they're mental.
Well, I do think it's fair to say that the right.
Rutvik is asking, Nirajan, serious question. I thought about, is the role of first principles in the liberalism reinvented wheel? It is creating a Soros out of the same book we praise. Their first principles, or let's say dependence on first principles, is might be wrong for other reasons, not for creating a Soros, because हमारा भी शिव भक्त रावण बन गया था. वो होता ही है society में.
It has won the argument in many areas.
Yeah.
The left has driven themselves to the point of absurdity in many areas. I was talking to one guy who told me that he's a Gen Z Democrat, voted for Joe Biden, and we had a conversation, the end result of which he is a hardcore Republican, down ticket 100% for one reason. I want to ask you guys what you think. He's in his mid-20s.
Could be any number of things.
Well, he's in mid-20s, owns his own business, in a relationship, and something happened in his life that made him decide to vote Republican, down ticket across the board. And I'll give you one hint. He's no longer in a relationship.
Divorce.
Nope. Any guesses?
No idea.
His child was aborted.
Oh.
Right, well, okay, yeah, fair enough.
I've had friends of mine that this happened.
He said he was so excited. He was going to be a dad.
Yeah.
He owned a business. And she said no. And then he said, I'm voting Republican across the board. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Terrifying story.
So I don't know how much longer we've got left, but I thought
Yeah,
I thought what it might be worth doing is talking about what is a sort of alternative way of looking at the world to the liberal way.
So before we get into that, you two have both convinced me, because my preconceptions about what liberalism was or is, apparently they were wrong, because the things that you're pointing out, the idea of a blank slate, I don't agree with. The idea that society existed prior to, or that society didn't exist prior to man, I don't agree with. So all of the things that you pointed out, I already agreed with, and I thought exactly. I had a different a different understanding of the fundamental.
To add some continuity to this that might be interesting is that I really appreciate the humility that you've come to this discussion with, Phil.
Well, because I want to understand.
Someone you cite frequently is friend of the show, James Lindsay.
Yeah.
When Carl put this to James, despite having frequent conversations, James decided to block Carl and not listen to that. And this is, I think, the same reason why we keep hearing this term far right is the same reason why James doesn't want to acknowledge this. The same reason why James is a liberal. In Cynical Theories, he and Helen Pluckrose said
I guess a lot of our viewers in the comment section would agree with James Lindsay. James Lindsay got pissed off with this idea and blocked Sargon of Akkad. Ye kya ajeeb baat hua?
reason they want to defeat critical social justice, wokeness, is because they fear not necessarily their aims going too far, because they agree with everything up until the 1990s, basically. It's that they're afraid of the far-right backlash that's going to come when this thing inevitably fails. And what far-right now takes to mean in parlance, this is why lots of disaffected liberals, even like yourself, Tim, are now part of the far-right. Far-right, especially after the Second World War, essentially put the blank slate on steroids, because nobody wanted to see the Nazis rise to power again, means any nation, whether they fought or allied with the Germans, who has a preference for their own people, their own history, their own culture, and their own national preferences. And that is seen as a provocation against universal, homogenous, anti-racist.
और यही किया गया है हिंदुओं के साथ भी. प्रॉब्लम एक है कि ये सब हो रहा था रिच प्रॉस्परस कंट्रियों के खिलाफ, कि तुम तो भाई पहले कॉलोनियलिज्म किए हो, तो अब लो थोड़ा इमिग्रेशन भोसरी के. तुमने तो भाई इतना पैसा कमा लिया है, अब थोड़ा रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूट करो भोसड़ी के। हम बेंचोद, हमने कॉलोनियलिज्म भी नहीं किया, भिखारी भी रहे, और हमको भी इमिग्रेशन लेना पड़ रहा है, हम भी मेजोरिटेरियन है, हम भी बोल नहीं सकते कि नहीं सबके लिए इक्वल लॉ होगा। ये क्या अजीब सिचुएशन है हमारा।
It's liberalism. And so this is why I think any time that a post-liberal vision has been articulated that is particular about a religion or a people, the likes of James and some of the anti-woke coalition have gone, whoa, hang on, guys. I thought we were just going back to the 90s here. We don't want the religious right in charge. I'm going to denounce you just as much as the left, and I'm not going to listen to any of the principled criticisms of liberalism from the guys they now see as far right.
When I muted James Lindsay, I didn't block him.
He's terrible on Twitter.
I muted him, and the reason was when I saw him arguing with you, Carl, and I know you, and you have sound, reasoned, and excellent conversations around these ideas, which are fun, funny, and exciting.
I didn't insult him, did I?
No, your tweet was very polite and academic, and he blocked you over it. And that said to me, I was like, at first I was like, well, that's weird. I'm like, I know James, he's a good guy. Like, why would you block Carl? This is they're the perfect people to discuss things.
I thought so.
And then that was the first issue I took. But then he started posting incessantly about Christian nationalism in such a way that conveyed no message.
He hadn't read the book when he actually made his podcast about it. He admitted this.
He just posted a post that didn't explain anything and just seemed like...
Hearing very surprising things about James Lindsay, by the way. I'm very surprised that this happened. Anand Sridhar makes a brilliant point here.
It was spamming it. And then ultimately he made the comment of something to the effect of, it's not my job to educate them. And I said,
no, it is your job.
These were three moves that were left liberal, leftist messaging strategies that I disagree with and find to be dishonest. And so I didn't block him, but I said, I don't want to see this anymore. This is ineffective messaging. It's irrational. He insulted my friend, which I take issue with, but I'm not so emotional to where I wouldn't listen to an argument simply because he was insulting Carl. But I felt that this classical liberal approach he was taking...
Anand, I'm disagreeing with you here because see, Tim Pool and Phil Labonte are not in 100% agreement all of a sudden because of this 1 hour conversation with Sargon of Akkad, right? But he's still going on with the conversation. James Lindsay should have had more patience. That's all I'm saying.
Or I'm sorry, the idea that he was promoting this idea, but at the same time was presenting in much the same way as the woke, which I disagree with. I said, not interested.
It's interesting how, like, I mean, there's a radio host called Ian Dale in the UK who normally is well known for his sort of common sense interventions. But when Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, came out and said, well, look, I don't think that we should trans children, actually, he has defaulted back into that kind of shit lib, screeching leftist frame where he's got, I'm going to do everything in my power I can to stop her. And it's like, but she's right. You know, why? Because he's fundamentally a liberal, even if he is a moderate one on most issues. Yeah. When you hit that hot button issue, then suddenly they become the screeching leftist. And it's like, what's going on?
Okay, so then go on with what you were talking about, the alternative, because I still think that there's far more good in classical liberalism or whatever you want to say, call it, than there is bad. And I think that
no, he's right. He's right.
वाह, आनंद ने तो क्या ब्रिलियंट लिबर्टेरियन पॉइंट निकाला यहाँ पे। ये तो भाई इंसेंटिव स्ट्रक्चर है। जेम्स लिंजी का है नहीं इंसेंटिव स्ट्रक्चर किसी को गाली देके ब्लॉक कर देने का। टिम पूल का है इंसेंटिव, इसलिए कर लिया। नाइस। तो व्हाट एम शास्त्री सेइंग हियर, ये मुझे बहुत दुख दे रहा है। ये बात है कि टीमकास्ट्स सेटअप, the kind of vibe, the conversations, the let's say setup in every sense, the physical setup, look of the studio, I do like that. I would like to do something like that. मेरा भी एक अजीब डिलेमा में हूँ भाई, अब क्या करूँ। ऐसा सिचुएशन है मेरे जिंदगी में that if I quit music completely, I could well make way more money with just this channel and have a successful channel. But I can't quit music because I'm at such a position in my music career that some insane things, great things are happening. You all know some of it, you all don't know some of it. Some great things might be in store, some great things are in store. तो अभी कुछ दिन पहले मेरा एक अरेंजमेंट आया वो शारी भाष्मी के साथ, जो कि फैमिली मैन में सेकंड लीड था। अभी मैं आशीष विद्यार्थी के लिए एक रैप गाना अरेंज कर रहा हूँ विथ माय टीम, ऑफ कोर्स द वंस हु कंपोज्ड द आई लो मोबाइल एंड स्टफ। ऐसा सिचुएशन है मेरा। मैं 2-3 एमएक्स प्लेयर के सीरीज में बैकग्राउंड स्कोर भी कर चुका हूँ। तो दीज आर द थिंग्स आई वुड हैव थॉट ऑफ लाइक unrealistic goals when I started out music. Or these even today for any struggling musician, these would be like fascinating. Oh my god, can that really happen? Can I really do it? ऐसा सिचुएशन मेरा अब आ गया है। अब मैं इसको कैसे छोड़ूं? On the other hand, if I quit College Street Kolkata YouTube channel completely, I can make way more money with my music than I'm making right now, combined with music and College Street Kolkata. But I can't even quit College Street Kolkata channel because the kind of voice I have, okay, I get 700, 800 views on average. I don't give a shit. It's 700, 800 quality viewers who listen to everything I say, with whom I have agreements, disagreements. We are building up a conversation. ऐसा चांस कितनों को मिलता है? तो अब ये टीम कास्ट मैं कर नहीं पा रहा हूं because of my music commitments and time, etc. Maybe if I get more financially stable with both the College Street Kolkata and the music career, then someday in the future my goal is a team cast like situation with Mr. Sociologist, Madam Political Scientist, all of them. So, and having guests on regularly. So that is the goal. At right now I'm absolutely stuck between two situations, both of which are going pretty well, and both of which anyone would be absolutely privileged and fascinated and lucky to have. हम क्या करें अब? It's a champagne problem, to be realistic.
Listen,
I didn't say anything.
You are
I'm letting you.
All right.
I think there's far more good in classical liberalism than there is bad. So what is this? What is the option or the solution? Because to say a postmodern traditionalist or something like that, people don't understand.
Yeah. So the thing to remember with liberalism is what it is the abstraction of the English political tradition, right? And so when we were saying yesterday that America is the fulfillment of the English political tradition, in many ways it really is. And it's because this is just how the English have always done politics. This is what they believe to be true. Like liberalism is basically a form of like Anglo-Sharia, right? It's like this is the right way for an Englishman to live, but it's not the right way for everyone to live.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is why when the Americans are parroting back their own values in the form of liberalism, they go, yeah, that's a good point. We'll do that. And then they just get on with their lives, right? When it happens in France, it becomes a bloody revolution because that's just not how they live, right? So when it happens in Russia, when the Russian Revolution becomes unbelievably bloody, it's just not how they live. So it's what it is just parroting back what you already believe back at yourself. Well, we don't need to have an abstract distillation of doctrine to do that, right? We already live and breathe these things. Like liberalism doesn't have a monopoly on freedom. It doesn't have a monopoly on equality of rights. It doesn't have a monopoly on fair procedure. Like these are things that all existed prior to liberalism. So we don't need liberalism to have those things. This is the way we live our lives. This is what we believe to be real and true and valuable anyway, right? So we can begin from a different foundation and still arrive with those things without the excesses and wrong turns that liberalism ends up taking because of the way it characterizes the origin of the world, right? So if we begin, instead of saying, well, man was an individual in the state of nature, running around fighting bears and eating acorns or whatever, we say, no, actually, what it was, human, and anthropologically, this is correct from the archaeology, humans lived in tribes. We've always lived in small tribes, like 20 or 30 people, right? And so you've always had a hierarchy. Every tribe has a hierarchy. And Jordan Peterson makes this point, human beings have been hierarchical. I mean, you know, the animals have been hierarchical since longer than trees have existed, right?
Lobsters.
Exactly. That's what the lobster thing is. Human beings are no different. There's always a head man in a tribe, and there's always a kind of, you know, the sort of patriarchal, you know, and then matriarchal layers in the tribe. And that's good and proper because you should respect your mum and dad. You should respect your nan, your granddad. You should respect your aunties and your uncles. And they will treat you in a particular kind of way. They'll treat you with love and kindness. They'll help you when you need help, right? And so instantly, we are already in a social frame. No, you belong in a society. You belong in these relationships. And they can be good and they can be bad. You know, obviously, you can have an abusive father or whatever. But this is why you have lots of different relationships with lots of people who love you. And so, yeah, if you've got an abusive father, well, then go to your uncle on your mum's side or something like this. You know, you can find people who can help you. And so this familial way, relational way of looking at the world imbues the relationships themselves with moral goodness. Whereas liberalism says, well, these are chains. These are chains that hold you back, hold you down. You'll never be properly liberated. It's like, no, that's not true. You know, my relationships with my friends, my family, my community, these are all where the nourishing content of moral life actually exists. And so now I've imbued these with a positive good. It is good to see your friends. It's good to see your family. It's good to see these things. Like, who doesn't love hanging out with their mates? Who doesn't love visiting their family at Christmas? Like, it's crazy that liberalism would have you arguing around the dinner table over partisan politics and breaking these relationships over who the current president is. That is madness. And yet it's inevitable. We hear these stories every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. Oh no, I'm going to have to argue about Trump or Biden.
You find it mostly on the left, people that
do. The most liberal people are the ones who are most prepared to break the relationships, right? And so, okay, we begin in a society. We begin as social creatures, and we need to think about taking care of the bonds that tie us together. Like your relationship, the quality of the bond that pins you to your mum, you to your dad, your mum to your dad, you to your siblings, to your children. The quality of that bond is important, right? Whether that person can really feel the connection that you have with that person. So people are always asking, okay, what does that mean I should do? It's like, that means you should really just pick up the phone and give your mum a call, right? Your mum wants to hear from you. That's all it is.
Nandish is saying, who are the Indian equivalents of these people for context? अगर तुम मुझे ये प्रश्न 2 महीने पहले पूछते तो मैं बोलता, अरे हिंदी और बंगाली मिक्स कर दिया, तो मैं बोलता के कोई भी नहीं है, मगर today I can proudly say Ajit Bharti's Farsa Cast episodes do come close, although they discuss more retail politics, day-to-day politics, but their philosophical grounding is pretty rock solid. But these podcasts are more so in the philosophy, political philosophy realm, no? तो इसलिए not exactly this, but Ajit Bharti and Farsa Cast are our face saviors.
It's literally all it is. Give your dad a ring and talk about the game with him. You know, he's probably frustrated, but he'd love to hear from you. And that's it. Give your mates a call. Be like, hey guys, because I mean, so much now, so many times now I see it where it's like nobody ever comes out on a Saturday night. No one ever comes around. Everyone was always flaky, right? Everyone's always like, oh yeah, I'll do it. But then they never turn up and they make excuses on the days. Like, oh, I'm just not going to come. It's like, no, if you tell your friends you're going to go out for a barbecue or something, just go. Just get off your ass and bloody go. It's not that hard. And they'll feel better. You'll feel better. You'll strengthen your relationship with one another. And you'll realize that you're happy. That's what happiness is.
I'm pretty optimistic. I don't know if it's short term or long term. It's probably very, very long term because the technology that we've built is killing us.
Oh yeah.
The dopamine machine, the masturbatory social machine, the porn machine. So in the literal sense, but also the video games in the figurative sense. But those of strong mental fortitude resist and do what must be done to preserve and maintain. And I don't think in this, in what we're seeing, any one of these liberals are going to be able to defeat natural selection.
Oh yeah.
If they don't have kids, if their social order is in chaos, if their rooms are messy and they won't clean them, they're going to fail. You know, I made this point because I've been saying for a few months now, a lot of people ask me, what can we do with the election coming up? I don't know what to do. And the obvious answer is register people to vote, focus on your local elections, volunteer, be involved, knock on doors, whatever you have to do, whatever it is you have to do for the political situation. But also don't forget, get fit, eat right, be healthy. If every single person in the United States who was opposed to the woke machine or whatever got fit and did nothing else, the natural consequence will be a tendency towards substantial success. A group of people that live longer, are healthier, can think quicker, move faster, they're less likely to die, they're more likely to solve problems and succeed and take over society than those who are fat, lazy, and do nothing.
You don't know what you believe until you're capable of defending yourself.
Absolutely. So I tell people, just get healthy, be fit, be the best version of yourself you can be. And if everybody did, you succeed.
But a part of that really is being a social animal, right? So it goes back to Aristotle. You're a man of the polis. You aren't, because I mean that could be said to the isolated individual in the state of nature, and they could follow it, right? But but it's totally valid. Get fit, get healthy, but not just for yourself, but for other people as well.
Right.
For the people around you who rely on you. Like, because your friend might fall over and hurt himself, and you might have to carry him a mile on your back to because of his broken ankle or something. You're not just doing it for you; you're doing it for other people. That's where the real sort of worth of life comes from.
When I point that out, it's a simple way to explain. Do the mathematical equation of net positive group of people and net negative group of people, and run the math in the long run. Compounded interest. Where do we end up? Liberals are not having kids. They're not going to have kids. But it's not just about that. The ideology is chaotic and tends towards collapse. And the people on the right, and I agree, classical liberals they're probably, I'll put it this way, classical liberals seem to be walking on the treadmill. Liberals seem to be standing still, moving backwards, and conservatives are running forward.
Because they want still some wiggle room for unorthodox lifestyle permissions.
Right.
That's often why. And it's not just a utilitarian calculus.
तो ये डेमोग्राफी डेस्टिनी अभी अचानक इनको भी पता चल रहा है. तो अब ए वतन आबाद रहे तू, पॉपुलेटेड रहना है देश को, ये सब भूल गए थे ये लोग.
No, you're not just reducing it to that. But the reason people have children isn't because I need to put my part into the pensions paid. It's a very weak argument that some people, even demographers, are making. It's because if they have sincere religious conviction.
Anand Sridhar, yes. This is a very important point. Nuclear family, Vivek पूरी तरह से वो उन लोगों को चूतिया बनाने को बोलता है. क्योंकि nuclear family actually, in Vivek's defense, he says nuclear family is a good thing, because he's saying it's in comparison to the broken families. That's all. You'll have to give that much to Vivek. He's saying that in comparison to the defense of broken families. Is that right? That चलो divorce कर लेते हैं. अगर adjust नहीं कर पा रहे हो तो it's better than remaining in a toxic marriage. तो क्या है? सब कुछ toxic ही है. तो भागो भोसड़ी के. तो उसके opposite argument से विवेक बोल रहा है कि nuclear families are very important. तो अब क्योंकि joint family तो option ही नहीं है, तो विवेक वहां पे joint family क्यों बोलेगा? In theory, objectively, factually, you are correct that Vivek is saying this to pander, but not just to pander, because one is the Indian model is not even a reality, not even a possibility in the realm at all. But on the other hand, feminists are going on saying that relationship toxic hai, chalo divorce. Uske opposite se Vivek absolutely bol raha hai.
And this is, I think, where Carl and I differ, and we still haven't hashed this out yet. They have a philosophy of human dignity that is good in its own sake, but also laden with expectations that you should aspire to emulate a divine ideal. It's like the Catholic idea of Imago Dei versus the liberal notion that you are your individual desires, and so you should use
Bella Daniel, who told you that new ideas are a necessity?
technologies to facilitate those desires and decouple choices from consequences to minimize the harm of constantly indulging. It's like you should be plugged into a renewable powered experience headset from Rick and Morty at all times. You should be on drugs. You should be gooning. You should eat whatever you want and then take Ozempic to ensure you aren't fat. And then as soon as your body starts failing you and you can't experience pleasure anymore, step in the suicide booth and exit and be recyclably composted for the good of whatever renewable powered vegetables or whatever they want to produce. The only thing that stops you from doing all that stuff is having a philosophy of human dignity that says, no, I inherited my body. I have an aspect of something aspirational, akin to the divine, and therefore I have a set of obligations to those people around me and to the ideal that
Yeah, I have no hatred for you. I'm not saying this as I was not defending joint family as the end all be all, because I know today's systems are fucked. State incentives, partition, wokeism, liberalism, someone going woke, someone not going woke, someone remaining conservative, someone not remaining conservative. If the family head is at all conservative, let's say regressive, him not getting everyone else on board, him knowing that everyone else has to be on board with him, a lot of things has fucked the Indian joint family system. But in non-Bengali families, it has happened much later. In partition facing families, it has happened even faster, because people realize that when the chips are down, like Joker said, these civilized people, they'll eat each other, which Christopher Nolan didn't want to show, but Joker was in fact right. And when partition happened, brother turned on brother in every Bengali joint family, okay, who faced partition more often than not, okay, which is why then as a result of that people started hating joint families. और उसके ऊपर से सिखाया गया तो हिंदुइज्म है तो कैस्टिज्म और सती प्रथा। ओ अच्छा, और जो हमारा जॉइंट फैमिली में सीनियर था वो तो हिंदू रिलीजियस भी था, अच्छा तो 2 + 2 = 4, हिंदुइज्म इक्वल टू जॉइंट फैमिली इज इक्वल टू बैड थिंग। तो अब मोर और लेस वो इनडायरेक्टली हर जगह पे ही पूरे देश में ही हो रहा है।
I would like to live up to. And those are the people that are having kids and raising them with the kind of ethics that safeguard them against from the education system that we were talking about that wants to transition them to liberals or the opposite sex.
I was reading a long time ago about how technology is destroying society. And I think my simplified version of the quote is probably better than the actual quote. Carl Schroeder, science fiction author, wrote, "The point is, if we do meet extraterrestrials one day, we'll be shaking hands not because we figured out how to avoid nuclear war, but because we figured out how to get along playing Xbox in our spare time. This reflects Schroeder's view on the significance of overcoming social and technological challenges to foster cooperation, etc." My interpretation of this when I initially read it was more about how I didn't actually read his essay or anything on it. And so what I was told, the article I was reading was more about how we are drowning ourselves in excess, and that the phrase was, if we ever meet aliens, we will shake hands not because we overcame nuclear weapons, but because we overcame the Xbox. So it's a bit of a different interpretation. I think it's a completely different point to what he was saying, because my view of that was we are creating these isolated internal worlds to remove us from harsh reality, and the people who cannot overcome that system will cease to exist.
So one thing I think is worth looking at is why we can end up getting the things that Phil wants out of the new foundations I'm proposing here, right? Because the sort of abstract doctrine of human rights that comes from the state of nature needs to be replaced with something. But it's actually quite easy to see how these things follow. So, for example, you say, okay, well, I'd like freedom. It's like, well, I mean, I assume we're going to define personal freedoms and freedom from state intervention, right? Which is what the original liberal view was. Yeah, who doesn't want that? We all want that. And we want that for one another. Okay, well, how do you get that? Well, actually, it's community organizing. It's having a strong local community that allows you to create a power block that resists government intervention. An isolated individual can do nothing to resist government power, but a community of people can. So, okay, we can actually physically get a measure of independence and autonomy from the state by being a strong local community. And then you've got other things. So, well, freedom from oppression, or to make sure that a person isn't going without, the person isn't starving to death or anything like that. Again, instead of being reliant upon the state, well, if you've got a strong social network, these people will take care of you. Like, I had to take care of my cousin because he was, he found himself homeless for a couple of days. So I personally paid for him to live in a hotel for a couple of nights, right? He could have appealed to the state, he could have done it, but he didn't need to because I love him. I will help him. And this is what being a part of these social networks does. Having a
गाइस ऐसा करते हैं कि इसका पार्ट 2 करते हैं, ठीक है, 12 बजे। अभी मुझे उठना होगा, मुझे पता नहीं था कि इतना लंबा होगा और इतना बात करने का टॉपिक भी आ जाएगा। एक्चुअली बहुत जूसी डिस्कशन हो रहा है। मैं सोच रहा था कि अभी ऐसे ही बंद कर दूं क्योंकि ये तो लिबरलिज्म का डिस्कशन उतना नहीं हो रहा है, मगर अब जो टॉपिक शुरू है यहाँ पे और भी डिस्कशन करने का एवेन्यू है। हाँ ठीक है, तो 12 बजे हम इसका पार्ट 2 कर रहे हैं। ओके, आई हैव टू गो feed my dogs their medicines and play with them and do my dinner as well. So thank you for joining, guys. See you at 12. We are coming back with this. About 1 hour is almost left. Yeah, I think, yeah, just 40 minutes is left, but we'll do the audience interactions from the chat as well. So thank you, guys. Bye bye.
श्रवरूढं महाभीमं गुणाद्रष्टाङ्गरप्रदं मत्स्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरां मुक्तकेशीं नरज्यवं पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तम्